Unless absolutely necessary, remember not to use it easily. Yu Gu instructed with a solemn expression. Zhu Yao nodded. Only then did he explain the technique to her in detail and guide her on how to use her divine power. Zhu Yao understood why he said that she could not use it unless it was absolutely necessary. This mystic art was to compress all of the godly energy in one's body into a single point and then release it in an instant. Once this art was used, at the very least, the godly energy would not be able to recover for 3 days. This was a method of killing 1,000 enemies while sacrificing 800 men. Do you remember it? Yu Gu asked. Almost there. He had completely understood the theoretical knowledge. Since that's the case, I will demonstrate it to you once. Yu Gu took a few steps forward and chanted the incantation. A ray of white light appeared in his hand, growing brighter and brighter, until even the surrounding scenery was a little blurry. That white light suddenly retracted and gathered in his palm, forming a white pearl. Yu Gu's palm moved, and that white pearl rose into the sky. Immediately after, a circle of white light flashed. Like fireworks in the dark night, it flashed for a moment. It was as though some sort of energy was spreading in all directions and finally disappearing into the horizon. Did you see that? Yu Gu asked. Zhu Yao was startled for a moment. Are you sure that wasn't fireworks earlier? For such a powerful mystic art, shouldn't the commotion be a little bigger and be a little more explosive? There aren't any devils here, so naturally, the effects won't be too obvious. I see. It's because it's an empty cannon. This art definitely cannot be used easily. Yu Gu pondered for a moment and once again instructed. This mystic art consumes quite a bit of mental energy. Even in my entire life, I can only barely use it twice. Twice? Zhu Yao's lips twitched. She turned to look at his stern and serious expression. Teacher, you've only used it once earlier. Oh. Yu Gu was startled for a moment, and then said, Then I can only use it once more. A mystic art like this, are you really going to waste it so casually? Is it really all right? Where's your common sense? Zhu Yao suddenly had the urge to roar out. She really wanted to grab onto his collar and shake him awake. Little mistress. The durian spirit who had left earlier crawled back out of nowhere. Standing far away, it hid behind a tree and only stretched out its fruit stalk, weakly looking in her direction. If not because Zhu Yao had yet to retract her divine sense, she really wouldn't have noticed it. What? Was she going to give Yu Gu a lesson on common sense? The durian spirit weakly glanced at Yu Gu next to Zhu Yao, afraid that he would have thoughts of eating it again. He carefully said, The people of the Phoenix clan are here and are waiting for you at the bottom of the mountain. I'm here to inform you. Phoenix clan? Could it be Xiaobai? Zhu Yao greeted Yu Gu and then flew away with the durian spirit. The moment she landed on the ground, she saw a sky-blue figure standing under the tall durian tree. He had a picturesque appearance and that expression that always carried a gentle and tolerant smile. This scene caused Zhu Yao to be dazed for an instant, as though she would be blown away by the wind the moment she opened her eyes. Little sister, he lightly called out. His voice was indescribably gentle and lingering. Xiaobai. Zhu Yao walked over and tossed away the strange emotions she had earlier. He lightly flicked his finger on her forehead and pretended to be angry. Impudent. You have to call me second big brother. Zhu Yao raised her head, glared at him, and began to bring up the past. What? You finally found your conscience and came to see me? It was one thing for him to plot against her back then, but to send her here and even place her under the durian tree, she simply couldn't tolerate it. His smile, however, grew even deeper. He stared intently at her face and gently asked, You're still angry? Humph. Am I that petty? She really was that petty. All right, don't be angry, don't be angry. It's second big brother's fault. He admitted his mistake very quickly, and with a coaxing tone, he said, Isn't second big brother here to see you now? Who cared? Zhu Yao rolled her eyes at him. Don't treat me like a child, all right? She was clearly older than him. Why don't you head straight to the mountain peak? Wasn't he very familiar with Yu Gu? Xiaobai was startled for a moment. He pointed to the durian tree and said, There's a barrier in this mountain. Unless the far ancient high god dispels it, no one else can enter. Oh, it was no wonder he placed her under the durian tree back then. It was to wait for you Gu to allow her to enter, right? Then I will look for my teacher and have him let you in. No need. Xiao Bai held onto her hand, and with a slight bit of force, he brought her into his embrace. He let out a long sigh. Second big brother just wanted to see you. I'll be leaving soon. Zhu Yao was startled. For a moment, she forgot to struggle. Raising her head to look at his satisfied expression, a strange feeling instantly surged in the depths of her heart. Seeing that you're fine, second big brother is at ease. His face was filled with no regrets. His hand gently stroked the hair behind her back, and his eyes were as deep as the ocean. You have to be well. What's wrong? Zhu Yao faintly sensed that something had happened. After taking a closer look, Xiao Bai's face seemed to be a little pale, and a hint of fatigue could be seen in between his brows. Xiao Bai's hand paused for a moment and then slightly released her. His smile grew deeper. What can I do? Zhu Yao frowned. Speak human language. Second big brother is just happy to see you. Zhu Yao did not speak and simply stared at him. A moment later, he was finally defeated. Sighing, he lowered his head and pressed his forehead against hers. Little sister, you're just too smart. Zhu Yao's expression sank. She did not know why, but she just did not want to hear those words. Second big brother is going to guard the nether abyss in the extreme south. He looked like he did not mind. Yet, he stared right into her eyes. Nether abyss? Zhu Yao was startled for a moment. Why did this name sound so familiar? After pondering for a moment, she suddenly widened her eyes. Isn't that the place where you were trapped back then? She could never forget his skinny look back then, so she subconsciously remembered the name of that place. Why are you going there? Xiao Bai simply smiled lightly, and his expression unexpectedly carried a hint of satisfaction. Pressing against her head, he gently rubbed it a few times. Zhu Yao shrunk her head a little uncomfortably. Recently, the devil race has been active frequently, and the various races have sent people over to slow them down. The nether abyss is even more chaotic. Hence, the patriarch sent me over to guard it. Why you? Putting it simply, that place should be the shadow of his childhood, right? Was it really a good idea to send him there? His expression sank, yet his smile did not diminish. The nether abyss is different from the devil sealing grounds. What is sealed there is devilish energy. If any devil were to enter, it would bring about a huge disaster. I am rather familiar with that place. For a moment, Zhu Yao felt as though she was being stabbed. For him to casually mention the matters of the past, it made her feel even more uncomfortable. She could not help but use her hands to suppress that sudden dazzling smile of his. If you don't want to go, then don't. Qin Yu won't blame you either. Xiao Bai was startled, and for a moment, he was unable to regain his senses, as though he did not expect that she would persuade him to give up. After a moment, he finally smiled. This time, it was not the smile that was as gentle as water earlier, but a real smile. As he smiled, he even stroked her head and muttered again and again. Little sister. Heh, little sister. Little sister. Zhu Yao frowned. What's with that expression of, I don't know what's going on? I was the one who suggested to go to the nether abyss. All right, so she was overthinking things. Don't worry, nothing will happen to me. His expression instantly relaxed a lot, and even that tiny hint of fatigue earlier had disappeared without a trace. Once the nether abyss has calmed down, second big brother will come visit you again. Chapter 187. She took out a piece of cotton from her storage pouch and laid it on a large rock under the tree. Gathering godly energy, she began to draw on it. As she drew, she recalled. After a while, she stopped and handed it over. This is the formation that teleported us out of the nether abyss back then. Remember it in case you can use it again. This was the diagram of the exit derived from that annoying Three Realms navigation system back then. After studying it for a while, she realized that it was a formation similar to shattering the void. Although she was confident in Xiao Bai, it was better to be prepared. Xiao Bai caressed this piece of cotton. His palms were slightly trembling. This, Don't ask me how I know about this formation. Zhu Yao interrupted his words. In any case, you won't be able to explain it clearly. Just keep it. Only then did Xiao Bai keep it carefully and heavily nodded. Then, he gave her a few more reminders, stuffed a storage pouch into her hands, and then left reluctantly. Zhu Yao thought that he would give her some self-defense mystic artifacts or the like. Opening the pouch, she saw that it was filled with melon seeds, dried fruits, and various snacks. The hell? He really treated her like a child. After Xiao Bai left, Zhu Yao grew more and more uneasy. She faintly felt that something was about to happen, and she began to feel anxious and uneasy for no reason. She couldn't calm down no matter what she did. This was the first time she felt such restless emotions. She clearly knew that this was very strange, yet she couldn't calm down no matter what. No need to worry. Even Yugu could not bear to watch it any longer. Xiao Bai is different from the other phoenixes. With his abilities, he's more than enough to guard the nether abyss. The corner of Zhu Yao's lips twitched. Teacher, can you put down the melon seeds first? While munching on the melon seeds, he said something so righteous. It was basically not convincing at all right? Yugu's hands paused for a moment. He obediently put down the melon seeds and picked up the dried fruits at the side. Xiao Bai is the only god among the 4 races who came out of that place alive. Even in the ancient era, there were no gods who were able to do it. It can be seen how strong his abilities are. She just knew that the things Xiao Bai prepared for her would all enter his stomach. Teacher has heard of the matter of Xiao Bai entering and leaving the nether abyss when he was young? Can you tell me more about it? Yugu swiftly swallowed a dried fruit and then picked up another one. Only then did he slowly say, I only know that Xiao Bai is the phoenix with the best aptitude in the Phoenix clan in the first place. Although he's the weakest water-type phoenix, his godly strength is something no one in the 4 clans can compare to. More than 2,000 years ago, a member of the devil race escaped from the land of sealed devils, wanting to rush to the nether abyss to absorb the devil chi within. Coincidentally, he saw the Phoenix clan leader and Xiao Bai passing by. The Phoenix clan leader resealed the devil clan, and Xiao Bai accidentally fell into the nether abyss. Zhu Yao frowned. She felt that there was something strange about this matter. However, she was unable to put her finger on what exactly was strange about it. She simply felt that it was not that simple. You also noticed that something was wrong? Yugu glanced at her and suddenly added, the nether abyss was forcefully opened by the devil, and the seal in this place has a flaw. When it's opened, if no new devilic energy enters, it will not close. The depths of Zhu Yao's heart fiercely trembled for a moment, and she suddenly had a terrifying thought. The nether abyss must be closed. The devil has already been sealed, and back then, there wasn't any devilic energy at the scene. Hence, godly energy of the same origin as the seal could only be used as a replacement. Yugu's expression sank, as he said with emphasis on every single word. So Xiao Bai was abandoned just like that? Back then, when Xiao Bai fell in, it wasn't that the Phoenix clan leader couldn't save him. Rather, she couldn't save him. Zhu Yao sank into silence. She suddenly recalled the first sentence that Xiao Bai, who was so skinny that only bones remained, said to her back then in the nether abyss. Were you abandoned by someone as well? She suddenly felt a little heartache. She could imagine what kind of feelings he had when he asked this question back then. For such a young child, who would be able to endure being abandoned by his own mother? Furthermore, it was a god who viewed their clan as more important than anything else. It was no wonder she had always felt that the relationship between Xiao Bai and Qian Yu had never been close, as though there was something between them. So this was the reason. Xiao Bai had entered the nether abyss before, so naturally, he's the most familiar with devilic energy. Yugu continued, adding that his godly energy is powerful. You don't have to worry about him the most. Though that was what she said, when she thought about the price he had to pay for this familiarity, she felt uncomfortable. In the next few days, she could clearly feel her restless emotions growing more and more serious. These emotions came in a very strange manner. However, she just couldn't calm her heart, and she couldn't sit still. She seemed to be about to step on the entire mountain peak until it was bald. Yet, no matter what, she couldn't stop that restlessness. This restlessness that came out of nowhere, lasted for exactly 7 days. Even Yu Gu had the urge to seal her in ice, to calm himself down. Zhu Yao suddenly missed her real master. If he was here, he would definitely help her analyze the situation calmly and find out the reason. Unlike a certain glutton, ever since he snatched her storage pouch, he had been nibbling on it every single day and was as happy as a little rat. Comparing the two, Zhu Yao felt so stifled in her heart that she wanted to betray her master. Just when would she be able to return to her master's side? She really wanted to return and date. The most depressing thing was, she had been here for so long, yet she hadn't even seen the shadow of a single bug. Just what was the point of coming here? Bug, if I call out to you, do you dare to come out? Just when this thought rose in the depths of her heart, suddenly, a loud boom resounded, and the entire ground began to shake. It tilted to the side, and in an instant, sand and stones flew everywhere. As though the ground had suddenly been lifted up, the entire world was trembling, and it began to collapse towards the left. Countless mountains began to collapse, and seawater began to flow in reverse. The trees began to snap one after another as well, and on the distant horizon, 3 words were slowly rising: bug. The hell? Did it have to be this frightening? What was with this feeling of having subtitles printed on the world? And why was it the word bug? With such large words, was it trying to tell her that, on the other side of the mountains and the other side of the sea, there was a loophole in the sky? I'm not Nuwa, and you're trying to mend the sky? He's awake. Yu Gu suddenly stood up with a heavy expression and did not even bother to munch on his melon seeds. Turning his head to look at the direction of the 3 words, he picked up his own disciple and flew in that direction. As she approached, Zhu Yao realized that the 3 words bug were growing larger, as though they were about to fill up the entire horizon. Zhu Yao felt that she was about to crash into it in the next moment. Only then did Yu Gu stop. Staring intensely at the empty space in front of him for a moment, he solemnly said, "In the end, you're still awake?" Zhu Yao was confused. She looked at her surroundings, yet she completely did not know who he was talking to. Suddenly, the empty space in front of her shook for a moment. Faintly, a gigantic crescent-shaped shadow could be seen. Like layers of fog dispersing, the shadow became clearer, and in the end, a gigantic turtle head was revealed. Such a huge turtle head. It was a crow's head that occupied the entire sky, and the word bug was clearly printed on its head. Why was the bug a turtle? Yu Gu. A thick male voice resounding like the reverberation of a bell. With just a light sentence, she felt her blood churning, her heart and lungs cracking, and her divine sense feeling as though it was about to explode. Just as she was about to be unable to hold on any longer, a cooling sensation suddenly came from behind her, and the commotion within her body was finally suppressed. Only then did Yu Gu slowly retract his hand. Zhu Yao glanced at him gratefully and silently felt stifled in her heart. She was the one to fix such a powerful bug. Realm Spirit, are you kidding me by sending me here? An illusory figure suddenly appeared on top of the turtle head. It was an extremely simple and elegant man. His face was very unfamiliar, and Zhu Yao was certain that she had never seen him before. However, out of nowhere, the moment she saw him, her heart was instantly filled with emotions, and even the restlessness she had for the past few days had disappeared without a trace. This feeling was very strange, as though she suddenly had the greatest kindness towards a person. She could not help but want to step forward and hug him. She had really gone crazy. The man first looked towards her, and his eyes revealed a hint of unclear emotions. After sizing her up a few times, he suddenly smiled and gave her an extremely amiable smile. Turning his head, he looked towards Yu Gu at the side and sighed. "Ha, it seems like you're the only one left now." Yu Gu raised his head and looked at the man. A bird that flew past on his right and nodded. Zhu Yao's expression darkened. Holding onto his head, she turned it towards the right direction. As expected, face blindness was incurable. "You woke up early." Yu Gu completely did not have the self-awareness that he had misjudged someone and asked with a stern look, "But she's already recovered?" The man's expression sank, and he shook his head. A moment later, he solemnly said. She's not ready yet. Do you have any countermeasures? The man turned silent, and a hint of defeat surfaced on his face. Zhu Yao instantly had the urge to rush forward and console him. I'm afraid this is the will of the heavens. Yu Gu's brows were tightly knitted. After a long while, he let out a long sigh. It was unknown if it was intentional or not, but he turned to glance at her and reached out his hand to stroke her head. Is this the will of the heavens? Yu Gu's eyes were looking forward, yet they were not focused, as though he had sunk into a daze. But why did she have to make this trip again? Is there no hint from the heavenly enlightenment as well? The man shook his head. This is the land of exile in the first place. I believe there won't be any more. Before he could finish, the ground once again trembled. A faint heavenly voice resounded from the horizon, and countless rays of light scattered, instantly illuminating the entire land with a myriad of colors. In the distance, a seven-colored ray of light shot straight into the sky, forming a gigantic pillar of light. Heavenly enlightenment. The man cried out in shock and excitedly looked at Yu Gu. Let us go take a look right now. After saying that, he once again carried Zhu Yao and flew in that direction. Zhu Yao could not help but turn back to look. That man was still standing at his original spot, and his expression was a little more relieved than before. Just like that, he watched them leave with a smile on his face. Next to him was an empty land, and he looked especially lonely. She suddenly felt a little sad and really wanted to return and talk to him. Teacher, wait a minute. I have something to tell him. Zhu Yao struggled, wanting to return. She kept feeling that the strange emotions she had these few days, that person would definitely be able to give her an answer. However, it was as though Yu Gu did not hear her at all. Carrying her, he flew away with a whoosh. Chapter 188. Yu Gu flew very quickly and was getting closer to the seven-colored pillar of light. The surrounding scenery, however, was becoming more and more familiar. Only when she saw that familiar tree did Zhu Yao realize. Wasn't this the place where the Phoenix clan lived? However, the towering tree that had reached the clouds and reached the sky had now been cut in half. Only half of the tree trunk was still standing, and the air was filled with the dust and sand that had been kicked up when the tree collapsed. Seeing this scene, both Zhu Yao and Yu Gu were startled for a moment. The Phoenix clan's parasol tree, the Dragon clan's dragon abyss, and the Qilin sky-supporting pillar. They were both unique existences in this world, divine objects nurtured by the heavens and the earth. Logically speaking, it was impossible for such a place to collapse no matter how great the disaster was. However, the Wudong tree had collapsed. Zhu Yao grew more and more worried. Just what was that earth-shaking commotion earlier? That was why there were such consequences. Let's go to the Terrace of Revelations first. Yu Gu frowned deeply. He once again glanced at that half of the parasol tree, and then headed straight towards the sky above. In the sky, a huge rainbow pillar of light was emitting light, and at the center of the pillar was the place where she had received the inheritance, the Terrace of Revelations. When they arrived, the open heaven stage was already filled with the god race that had rushed over from all directions. Dragon, Phoenix, Qilin, not a single one was missing. Without exception, all of them looked at the pillar of light in the sky with shocked expressions. Bringing her along, Yu Gu directly landed at the very center. Everyone was stunned for a moment before bowing in unison. Greetings, exalted goddess. Even clan leader Qian Yu bowed to him respectfully. Looking at Zhu Yao at the side, her eyes instantly brightened a little. Zhu Yao waved her hand and greeted her. He took a closer look. Perhaps because of the recent events, almost all the members of the Phoenix clan had arrived, but Xiao Bai was nowhere to be seen. It seemed like he was still in the nether abyss. Exalted goddess, do you know the reason for the sudden appearance of Tianqi? The dragon tribe leader stepped forward and asked. Yu Gu raised his head and looked at the seven-colored pillar of light. However, he did not answer his question. Instead, he took a step forward and stood at the center of the formation. One look and you'll know. The formation lit up with a red light again, and the four inheritance stones corresponding to the four races appeared next to the seven-colored light pillar again. Just like last time, The first 3 inheritance stones were still as bright as before, and the patterns on them were still the same. As for the 4th stone, it was also a piece of fuck. Why are there words on it? Moreover, it was written neatly in a row, as if it was printed. Press me, press me, press me, press me. The corner of Zhu Yao's lips twitched as she weakly took a step back. Calmly raising her head, she continued to look at the pillar of light. Nothing good would happen if she pressed it. Only a fool would press it. Yugu suddenly raised his hand and pressed his palm onto that black rock. What happened to the tacit understanding between master and disciple? With a pat, the previously pitch-black stone suddenly lit up with a green light. It instantly lit up as if it had been lit up, and the black color disappeared. What was amazing was that there were no patterns on it. The light grew brighter and brighter until it finally converged into a beam. Like a projection, it struck the 7-colored pillar of light in front of it. Suddenly, rows of runes that seemed to be alive slowly appeared. It was a language that she had never seen before. It looked like the oracle bone script that she had seen in museums, but, damn it, she could actually understand it. It was as if a translator was suddenly installed in her mind. Her eyes looked foreign, but the correct meaning automatically appeared in her mind. By the Lord's order, gods and devils shall descend together, opening a flourishing age of the ancient era, fulfilling the responsibility of the 3 realms, and creating an eternal sacred ground. Someone lightly shouted out the words on it. Zhu Yao's heart skipped a beat. Earlier, she did not realize it, but with this thought, she suddenly recalled. Weren't these the words Realm Spirit told her back then? The heavenly revelation Realm Spirit mentioned back then was this? Nirvana and rebirth, banishment begins and ends, beginning with the profound beginning and ending with the profound end. That person continued to read. The last few words sounded a little unfamiliar. Zhu Yao, who had switched professions as a language teacher, was puzzled. What did it mean? Hi God, I wonder what these words mean. Is it related to the abnormal activity earlier? Someone asked. Knowing that she was not the only illiterate person present, Zhu Yao calmed down. The Qilin clan head asked with a curious look. I wonder what the heavenly Tao's warning is. Yugu's brows furrowed even deeper. Turning his head, he swept his eyes across the 3 patriarchs. A moment later, he solemnly said, The meaning of the heavenly revelation this time, I am unable to penetrate it either. The faces of the 3 instantly paled, and anxiety could be seen clearly. Qinyu, what should we do now? Even the parasol tree has fallen. The Qilin clan head, that's right. The sky pillar has suffered heavy injuries as well, and it won't be able to hold on for long. The dragon clan head, my dragon abyss as well. What will come will come. Yugu suddenly added. Everyone, it's best that you guard the sealed grounds first. The meaning of the heavenly revelation. Wait for me to penetrate it before replying to the various races. High God is right. The 3 of them let out a long sigh, and then nodded in unison. A fire phoenix suddenly flew over and charged straight towards the terrace of revelations. For some reason, that fire phoenix flew over in its original form, and when it landed on the ground, it did not transform back into its original form. In any case, it fell straight onto the terrace of revelations. In an instant, a thick stench of blood filled the entire terrace of revelations. Yu Ming, Qianyu recognized that this was a phoenix of her clan, and took a few steps forward to help him return to his human form. However, the blood on his body was still flowing down freely. How did you, clan head? He grabbed onto Qian Yu's hand, completely disregarding his own injuries, and heavily panted. The seal. The seal of the Devil Sealing Grounds has already been broken. Everyone's expression instantly changed. Yugu was the first to react. Picking up Zhu Yao, who was beside him, he sped towards the south. His speed was so fast that the scenery around him turned into afterimages. Zhu Yao only regained her senses a moment later. He was heading towards the Devil Sealing Grounds in the extreme south. Earlier, that phoenix said that the seal had been broken. Could it be the Devil Sealing Grounds? Her heart instantly clenched. Did he have to be so violent? That place was where all the devils in the world were sealed. If all of them were to come out, what would happen then? But why did her teacher have to bring her along? Although she did not mind fighting alongside the Phoenix clan, she seemed to have only learned her mystic arts for a few months. What use would a dabbler like her be if she went? Dragging the others down was not a very professional thing. Teacher, do you need cannon fodder? Yugu completely did not have the time to care about his disciple's dilemma as he flew even faster. Zhu Yao had never experienced such a terrifying speed before. If not for the divine light protecting her body, she would have long been flattened by the air currents. Not to mention the afterimages that were constantly flashing past in the surroundings. She felt that she was a little dizzy. I really want to vomit. 15 minutes later, Yugu finally stopped. Before Zhu Yao could even suppress the disgust in the depths of her heart, she was dumbfounded by the tragic scene in front of her. The ground was filled with blood that flowed like a river. No matter if it was in the sky or on the ground, there were figures of various gods everywhere. Cheilants, dragons, phoenixes. Every single one of them had already reverted to their original forms, and were currently using all of their strength to attack the darkness that was flying everywhere in front of them. There were even some who had exhausted their mystic energy and did not hesitate to injure their own bodies, as they directly used the bloodline of the god race that naturally countered their opponents to attack. In front of them, there was a large arc-shaped screen of light. Countless shadows wanted to charge over, however, they were blocked by the screen of light. Occasionally, they would reveal a few terrifying and twisted faces. Hi God! Someone noticed Yugu's sudden appearance and exclaimed out. The scene, which was still in a state of devastation earlier, instantly revealed a few hints of excitement and hope. How's the situation? Yugu cast an art, and the screen of light, which was still cracked by the devil earlier, instantly returned to its original state. The devil has already broken through the first layer of the seal. It seems like the second layer of the seal won't be able to hold on for long either. Yugu frowned deeply. Looking at the land which had already turned into darkness in front of him, he clenched his fists and said with a stern look, "The seal must be repaired. You guys wait here." After saying that, he immediately charged into the base of the devil, which was crazily crashing into the screen of light. Teacher, Zhu Yao tapped on his shoulder. Yugu turned around. At first, his face was filled with astonishment, and then he said with a furious expression, "Why did you come in? Weren't you the one who pulled me in?" She completely did not have the time to refute him, all right? He was startled for a moment. Lowering his head, he looked at his two interlocked claws and was silent for 2 seconds. Amen. Perform well. Zhu Yao's face was filled with what the hell. The moment she entered, she felt a gust of sinister coldness, which instantly enveloped her entire body. She could not help but feel a surge of anger rising from the depths of her heart, as though she had met her natural enemy. She could not control herself and had the urge to attack. Was this the instinct of a god? There's actually someone who's here to seek death? A sharp and strange voice suddenly resounded in her ears. However, she was unable to find a physical body and could only see fluttering black shadows. So brave. It seems like I have to properly entertain you. Ho ho ho. How do I kill you? What if it's a phoenix? Why don't I pluck out its feathers first? The hell? Zhu Yao instantly felt her violence meter skyrocketing. Raising her hands, she shot out countless lightning sparks in all directions, crackling to her heart's content. This old lady hates it the most when people mention my feathers. Lightning sparks. It's actually of the lightning attribute. Cries of shock sounded from within the black shadows, and faintly, there were even screams of pain mixed within. Yugu did not remain idle either. At the same time the lightning sparks appeared, with a twist of his hand, a golden light was emitted from his body, spreading in all directions. The pitch-black world earlier was instantly illuminated by the golden light, and even the sinister coldness had been dispelled quite a bit. A struggling black shadow attacked him. With a twist of his hand, that black shadow instantly turned into black smoke. Only then did Yugu have the time to care about his disciple, whom he had accidentally dragged in. Although you're already here, follow me to repair the seal. Zhu Yao was stunned. Me? Ho ho, you must be joking. Teacher, I don't know how to do it? The offering seal art is the first layer of the seal. Offering seal. An incantation surfaced in her mind, along with the corresponding casting method. You remember now? Amen, Zhu Yao nodded. I do remember. Coincidentally, there are two extreme points of the seal. I'll take the left, you take the right. Go. Hey. Let her finish speaking, hey? She knew the method, but that mystic art could only be cast in a radius of a square meter. At the very most, it could only seal a single devil. The ones in front of her were evidently mass-produced. She couldn't handle them. However, a certain person's figure was already nowhere to be seen. Chapter 189. Now that things had progressed to this point, Zhu Yao had no choice but to bite the bullet. The area inside was very wide, and the deeper they went, the denser the gloomy and cold aura from earlier became. Probably because of Yu Gu's mystic art earlier, their line of sight was very clear. Zhu Yao cast a few defensive mystic arts on herself, and then, with her fastest speed, she headed in the direction Yu Gu mentioned. Occasionally, there would be black shadows flying over. She would not stand on ceremony and direct lightning over, dispersing them directly. These were just devils who had not completely broken free from the seal, so their power was not complete. She could deal with them with ease. At first, she was a little worried that she wouldn't be able to find the extreme point of the first layer of the seal. Only when she went deeper did she realize that she was thinking too much. That place was flashing with red light and floating runes and divine might. It would be hard for anyone not to recognize that it was a seal. She landed right at the center. This place was already a little dusky. Only when she got closer did she realize that there were already several gigantic corpses lying around the pole. There were dragons, cheilants, and even phoenixes. The blood on the ground reflected the light of the seal red. These gods were probably sacrificing themselves to protect the seal. Zhu Yao's heart clenched for a moment, as though something was stuck in her throat, and she felt a little sad. Gritting her teeth, she suppressed the tumbling emotions and the fury in her heart, and began to inspect the seal's extremity. The so-called extreme point of the seal was actually the same as the formation eye of a formation. It had the effect of increasing the seal's effect, but it was also the weakest and most difficult position to defend. She checked and found that the damage to this extreme point wasn't too great. It was just a loss of divine power, so it couldn't continue to operate. All he had to do was fix it a little and inject enough divine power into it. Without much hesitation, Zhu Yao immediately repaired the damaged parts. Then, she set down layers of defensive formations in the surroundings. She then formed hand seals and stood at the very center, injecting godly energy into the seal once again. The moment she inserted it, Zhu Yao regretted it. Initially, offering seals did not require much godly energy. However, she never expected that this seal's extremity point would be this powerful. When she inserted her godly energy into it, it was like a stone sinking into the ocean, and it could not even stir up a single wave. However, she couldn't stop. If she interrupted the flow of divine power, the seal would immediately collapse. Die. How did Master know that she was up to the task? What should he do now? Could it be that she had to wait for Yu Gu to restore the other seal before swapping places with her? Could she hold on until then? Look what I found. A cold male voice suddenly rang out, and the surroundings instantly darkened. A word surfaced in Zhu Yao's mind. The hell? 5 meters away from her, an illusory figure suddenly appeared. It was as black as ink, but there were wisps of black smoke surrounding it. It was such a thick, demonic aura. Clearly, this demon had completely broken free from the seal, and its magic power had recovered by more than half. I didn't expect there to be a survivor here, and a phoenix at that. The man's voice was filled with provocation. Every word seemed to carry a bone-piercing chill that drilled into the bones. Zhu Yao could not help but tremble for a moment, and the depths of her heart was instantly filled with rage. She could not help but want to launch an attack. Zhu Yao knew that this was an instinct that was engraved in the bloodline of the god race, an instinct that would never rest until the devil race was dead. However, she couldn't move right now. She could only suppress this urge with all her might and focus on activating the seal. The black shadow instantly floated 2 steps closer and slowly condensed into a black ball. Since you're the only one left, why don't I send you off? The moment his voice fell, that black, demonic ball flew towards her. Zhu Yao instinctively wanted to dodge it, but she endured it. The demonic ball was blocked by the formation she had set up beforehand at a distance of 1 meter away from her and instantly dissipated. That devil was a little shocked. You do have some capabilities. It's no wonder you're able to survive until now. The black shadow instantly grew several times larger. A cold wind swept past, and hundreds of black icicles, one after another, came attacking towards the defensive formation. Though this formation of hers was effective, it was still unable to withstand such continuous attacks. With a creak, it collapsed like broken glass. Just as the remaining icicles were about to fly in an instant, countless lightning bolts formed an arc, surrounding Zhu Yao at the center. Fortunately, she had a backup plan. She set up 2 layers of formations. It's actually of the lightning attribute. That devil was startled for a moment, and then he coldly snorted. Let's see how long you can last for. The attacks of the black icicles became even more concentrated as they flew straight towards the lightning bolts. The lightning formation Zhu Yao had set up was a miniature version of the 9 Revolutions 5 Elements lightning formation outside the Lightning Divine Hall back then. Though she had used godly energy to set up the formation, and its might could surpass that because she was in a rush, it wasn't as complete as the one in the Lightning Divine Hall. Not to mention that the one outside was a devil. As expected, a moment later, when that devil saw that his attacks were unable to break through, he suddenly released devilic energy that filled the sky. One by one, they wrapped around her formation, attempting to use his devilic energy to devour the lightning bolts. No matter how strong her formation was, the godly energy she used to set it up was, after all, limited. Adding that she had purposely held back her energy to repair the seal, the lightning bolts grew dimmer in just a few moments, and the dark and cold aura of the devilic energy had pushed her god race instincts to their limits. Her entire body was tensed up, and she wished that she could go out and destroy him at any moment. However, she had no choice but to endure it. As the lightning bolts slowly dissipated, the devilic energy instantly grew out a long black spike, which extended outwards. It's over. She was going to turn into a hedgehog. Just when the long black spike was about to touch her, a purple flame suddenly descended from the sky, instantly burning the devilic energy cleanly. Zhu Yao raised her head to look, and in the sky not far away, a gigantic phoenix whose entire body was burning with flames was currently flying. She was the one who spat out those flames earlier. After the gigantic phoenix saved her, it immediately flapped its wings in the direction where the devil was standing. In an instant, the surroundings of the devil were burning with those purple flames as well. Zhu Yao heard a miserable cry, and the figure of that black figure, which was being burned by the flames, dimmed a little. "Little Seventh, are you all right?" A familiar male voice carried a little anxiousness and nervousness as he asked. Zhu Yao was startled for a moment as she widened her eyes. "Little Sixth?" That phoenix instantly stopped 3 meters away from her and said with a sunken voice, "You should be calling me Sixth Elder Brother. Why did you run in here?" "Master ordered me to repair the seal." Zhu Yao flipped through her memories that had fast-forwarded for 400 years, and only then did she recall that Little Sixth seemed to have been guarding the extreme south all this while. They had only met once during the inheritance ceremony, so she never expected that he would recognize her. "Even if that's the case, I will protect you." He flapped his wings and did not have the intention to return to his human form. The same flames once again burned in the surroundings, and the devilic aura instantly dispersed quite a bit. Zhu Yao heaved a sigh of relief. With someone protecting her, she could now focus on injecting godly energy. She did not know if it was because the battle earlier had attracted the attention of the other devils, or because they sensed that they wanted to repair the seal. More and more devils were gathering over here. In the beginning, Little Sixth was still very relaxed, but as the number of enemies increased, he began to faintly show signs of weakness. Zhu Yao, however, could only worry helplessly. More importantly, the godly energy in her body was already decreasing, and there were faint signs of it drying up. However, this goddamn seal's extremity was not reacting at all. If this were to continue, both of them would have to die. A few minutes later, Little Sixth was unable to dodge in time and was struck by the devil. Half of his wings instantly drooped down, and fresh blood spurted out. With a loud boom, he fell not far away from her. Little Six. He did not stay on the ground for too long. Using his other wing, he flapped it forcefully, and in an instant, a few feathers flew towards the devil in front of him. "I'm fine. Leave this place. I'm going to find my master." "Little sister." He suddenly interrupted her words. "Don't worry, Big Brother Sixth will protect you well." The flames around his body changed, instantly turning into a sky blue color. His voice, however, sank a little. "Also, little sister, I'm sorry." After saying that, he charged towards the devil. "The hell?" Zhu Yao could not help but curse. "I wanted you to call for reinforcements, you know? Why are the birds in this world so hard to communicate with?" Also, he was apologizing for the incident back then when she was still in the shell, right? It was because of his push that caused her to give birth prematurely, and she was unable to grow out her tail feathers. This old lady isn't blaming you, so why the hell are you apologizing for? Now is not the time to act on impulse, and Zhu Yao did not have the time to call him back either. Only by hurriedly activating this seal could the two of them be saved. Zhu Yao desperately injected godly energy into it, hoping that her godly energy would be enough to activate the seal. In the depths of her heart, she chanted over and over again, "It must be activated. It must be activated." She could already sense that the godly energy in her body was becoming emptier, until she could no longer squeeze out a single drop of godly energy. Yet, there was still no reaction from the seal. Zhu Yao placed both of her hands at the center of the seal, and she suddenly had the urge to cry. How could this be? Who the hell designed this extremity? It was definitely illogical. Could it be that she was going to log into the next version here? She couldn't accept this. It would be great if she had more godly energy. Suddenly, she felt a warmth in her body. The godly energy that was dried up earlier instantly surged and endlessly appeared in her body. Zhu Yao was completely dumbfounded. The heavens were suddenly treating her too well, and she was unable to react in time. What should she do? Urgent request. Waiting online. Without any time to think, as she injected the godly energy that suddenly appeared into the seal, she carefully sensed the flow of the godly energy. Only then did she realize that the godly energy that suddenly appeared was directly transmitted from the bottom of her feet. The godly energy was simple and thick, and she clearly felt that this energy did not belong to her. However, it carried an indescribable sense of intimacy. She did not do anything herself, yet the godly energy seemed to have its own consciousness as it endlessly entered her body. It quietly and appropriately stayed within her body, and then she guided it into the seal. It can't be. Could it be that godly energy could be charged online as well? Zhu Yao felt that her brain was a little lacking. With this godly energy, in less than 15 minutes, the seal had already been completely activated. Gigantic engraved runes instantly appeared beneath her feet, and then they extended in all directions. In an instant, they covered every single place that she could see, and wherever those runes passed by, the devilish energy would completely dissipate. Only when the runes spread across half of the boundary did they converge with the same runes on the other side. In an instant, a gigantic formation appeared in the sky. It was circular in shape and was separated into two halves, one black and one white. It looked a little like the diagram of Taiji. That formation began to spin rapidly, and various terrifying and miserable screams resounded in the surroundings. A gigantic black vortex appeared in the sky, and within the vortex were all devils that had broken through the seal. As though they were trapped by the vortex, they flew upwards and finally disappeared into the center of the formation in the sky. In less than a few moments, the surroundings had returned to being clear skies, and the devilish energy had completely dissipated. Chapter 190. The seal of the Devil Sealing Grounds was restored, and the devil race was once again sealed. However, this time, the god race suffered heavy losses. Most of the clansmen sent to guard this place were lost, and only a few survived. It must be known that those who were qualified to guard this place were all clansmen with outstanding godly power. With the devil race breaking the seal, the strength of the god race was greatly reduced. If they were to do it again, they would not be so lucky to be able to seal it again. Zhu Yao's godly power was greatly depleted. Although it was mysteriously replenished later on, after all, it was not her own godly power. After the seal was activated, that godly power disappeared. She slept for 2 whole days, and when she woke up, she realized that she had already returned to the straw cottage in the extreme north. Zhu Yao was a little worried about Little Six's injuries. She wanted to take a leave from her master and return to the parasol tree to take a look. However, after looking around, she could not find Yugu's shadow. Wasn't disappearing from time to time an essential skill for every master? She had no choice but to meditate and recover. Only when the sun had set did she see a figure flying back from the horizon. In an instant, he had already landed in front of her. However, there was another person next to him. Little sister. The person who returned with him was Xiaobai. The moment he landed, he hurriedly took 2 steps towards her. His face was a little anxious. Why are you up? How's your body? Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere? He pulled her up and carefully inspected her. Zhu Yao pressed his hand down. Xiaobai, why are you here? Only then did he chuckle. His expression returned to its familiar gentleness, and he reached out to tidy her hair. I've already been here for 2 days. You're injured, so how can I not come? I'm fine. Zhu Yao gave him a reassuring smile. You've just overdraft your godly power. I'll be fine in a few days. Overdraft your godly power? Xiaobai's expression paled, and he immediately pulled her hand to check her pulse. Don't worry, I've more or less recovered. She had already tried it the moment she woke up. Her godly power had already recovered by more than half, and it was at least 50% charged. Xiaobai checked for a moment, his brows furrowed even deeper, and his expression grew even more complicated. The corner of his lips moved, as though he wanted to say a few words to her, but in the end, he still sighed. Vietnam. Yugu walked over as well. Yugu walked over as well. You've done very well this time. He raised his hand in appreciation. He gently touched the head in front of him. Although the speed was a little slow, at least the seal was repaired. Yugu rarely praised others, at least, ever since she came to the extreme northern lands. This was the first time she saw him praise her so straightforwardly, so Zhu Yao was a little happy. If it didn't fall on Xiaobai's head, the effect would be even better. Zhu Yao clearly saw Xiaobai's gentle smile, and her face stiffened for a moment. She silently gave Xiaobai an apologetic expression and pulled down a certain someone's evil claws. I'm sorry. He hadn't taken his medicine today. Rest well for the next few days. There's no need to be in a hurry to learn mystic arts. Yugu instructed her with a few words, and then nodded towards Xiaobai. Only then did he turn around and leave, indicating that he wouldn't disturb the siblings' reunion. Xiaobai. As for the Phoenix clan, Zhu Yao asked a little anxiously, call me second brother. Xiaobai flicked his finger on her forehead before replying, don't worry, I can handle it. Then what about Little Six? Recalling that Xiaobai had always been biased against Little Six, she could not help but add another sentence. This time, when the seal was being repaired, it was fortunate that Little Six was protecting me. Otherwise, he was injured because of me. As expected, his expression sank a little, but at least, he did not clearly frown like before. Stroking her head, he said, I know. Taking a deep breath, his smile grew even gentler. Changing the topic, he said, second brother brought you some things. With a twist of his hand, he took out a bag. These are all your favorite foods. If it's not enough, second brother will give you more. Before he could even finish, a white figure flashed next to him. Yugu, who had yet to walk far, had returned, and blew over like a gust of wind. He stared intensely at the bag in Xiaobai's hand. Zhu Yao. Xiaobai. Yugu. You two continue? He simply stared. Zhu Yao's expression darkened. This glutton from the ancient era. Letting out a deep sigh, She took the bag from Xiao Bai's hand. A certain pair of eyes immediately shifted to her hand. Zhu Yao could even feel the tip of her hand burning from his stare, so she had no choice but to pass it over to him. A certain person received it with a satisfied look and gave her a obedient disciple expression. He casually took out a dried fruit, and as he elegantly and coldly chewed on the dried fruit, he turned to look at Xiao Bai's hand, as though he was waiting for him to take out something else. He no longer mentioned anything about leaving. Teacher, where's your moral integrity as an ancient god? She really wanted to sever the master-disciple relationship with him. Under such an intense gaze, Zhu Yao was simply unable to pull Xiao Bai over to talk about her parents without any distractions, let alone unravel the knot between him and little Six. Xiao Bai hurriedly said a few words, and then left. Before he left, he even took out a wooden bracelet and wore it on her hand. This is made of wudong wood. It can resist against devilic energy. Remember to always wear it on your body. After saying that, he purposely leaned close to her ear and transmitted his voice. Don't worry, second brother has prepared another bag in this bracelet. After saying that, he even meaningfully glanced at Yu Gu at the side, and then left reluctantly. Zhu Yao was speechless. Just where did he see that she liked to eat snacks? 5 days later, Zhu Yao's godly energy had completely recovered, and it was even faintly showing signs of growing. Just as she was rubbing her fists, planning to go all out, Yu Gu slacked off. Putting aside the fact that he did not teach her any mystic arts, he even did not do any proper work, and brought her around the mountains to hunt. As long as he saw a living being, he would capture it and request her to cook it. Teacher, that's a grasshopper. It can't be eaten. Teacher, that's a snake. It's poisonous. Teacher, can you spare that sparrow? It's not even as big as your palm. Teacher, let go of that panda. It really can't be eaten. Teacher, apples can be eaten, but that one has already turned into a spirit. Can't you see it howling? Teacher. Zhu Yao sighed deeply. Resigned to her fate, she took out the bag of snacks in her storage bracelet and handed it over with both hands. I'll be honest, and hand it over to the organization. All right? Please focus on your lessons. Yu Gu was startled for a moment before receiving it with a calm look. Taking out a dried fruit, he finished it in 2 bites. Disciple, from tomorrow onwards, teacher how to tie my hair? It can't be, right? Wasn't he always a handicap, which was why he wasn't willing to learn? Why did he suddenly change? Yu Gu kept the bag and placed it back into her hands. Suddenly, the corner of his lips rose into an arc. Your teacher suddenly wants to learn. What did he mean? Yu Gu said with a stern look. Your teacher has always been unconcerned about external matters, but I can't always let you help me. Zhu Yao looked at the bag of snacks in her hands and then looked at his smiling eyes. She could not help but reach out her hand to touch his forehead. His teacher couldn't possibly be this normal. Teacher, you're not having a fever, right? 3 days later, Zhu Yao really felt that Yu Gu was having a fever. Putting aside the fact that he was no longer snatching her snacks at every turn, putting aside the fact that he no longer stole her snacks for no reason, he even took the initiative to learn various life skills. She even learned needlework. 9 out of 10 times, her hair would be coiled into a chicken's nest, and all the dishes she stir-fried would be charred charcoal. All the furniture he made would be missing arms and legs, and the things he sewed would eventually become a piece of rag. But it was as if he suddenly understood the importance of life skills. He was extremely engrossed in his studies. Furthermore, he was determined not to let her interfere. He would rather wear a bird's nest hairstyle every day and wander around, insisting on doing it himself. Such a sudden change in style caused Zhu Yao to suspect if he had been taken over by someone. If it wasn't for the fact that no matter how many times he failed, he would still maintain a calm expression that said, I didn't do it. Zhu Yao spent her days observing his various failed creations. Of course, she had put aside the matter of learning mystic arts as well. Who was the master and who was the disciple? This kind of thing continued for a month, when the 3 clan leaders suddenly came to the northernmost land. Only then did the situation improve. Firstly, the reason why the 3 patriarchs came here this time was to ask about the prophecy in the heavenly revelation. Back then, Yugu had promised that once there was a result, he would inform the various clans. Secondly, it was a huge matter that caused everyone to feel uneasy and fearful. For some unknown reason, ever since the devil broke the first layer of seal on the devil's sealing grounds, not a single one of the phoenixes that died in the front lines had been revived. Initially, phoenixes that had reached the end of their lives would transform into blazing flames and be reborn in 3 days. However, a month had passed, and not a single one of those phoenixes that died had ignited their nirvana flames. And not only that, even the children of the dragon race were facing problems. The dragon eggs in the Dragon Mountain had long reached the day where they could hatch, yet the little dragons inside had yet to hatch. Furthermore, the aura inside was growing weaker, as though it was about to disappear. Though the Chelan race was viviparous, and it was still unknown if they were facing a reproductive crisis, out of the 3 god races, 2 of them had encountered such a situation, and they could not help but panic. Yugu was the only ancient god in this world. If there was anyone who knew the answer to such a strange phenomenon, it would be him. Hence, after the 3 clans discussed, they decided to come to the northernmost land together. High deity, the bloodline of the god race cannot be severed. Without the protection of the god race, I'm afraid that the return of the devil race will no longer be obstructed. Qian Yu's expression was solemn, and anxiety could be clearly seen between her brows. Unfortunately, even Yugu was unable to give them an answer. He simply raised his head to look towards the horizon and lightly sighed. Everything is part of the heavenly Tao. Even if it's us, we are powerless to resist. The 3 patriarchs could only return in disappointment. Looking at their disheartened figures, Zhu Yao faintly felt a little sad. The 3 god races had guarded the same seal for so many years, yet, in the end, they were going to face a crisis of extinction. No one would be able to understand this, right? Teacher, is there really no other way? Yugu turned and stared at her for a moment, before reaching out his hand to stroke her head. He slowly said, "Maybe there is, maybe there isn't." What did he mean? Zhu Yao did not understand. However, in the following days, the situation seemed to be getting more and more serious. The earth-shaking situation from back then appeared once again. It was as though the entire world was collapsing, and it was getting more and more serious. Back then, a situation like this caused the parasol tree to collapse and the devil race to break out of the seal. This time, she still did not know what the outcome would be, but evidently, it would not be too optimistic either. However, her teacher was no longer as nervous as before. Instead, he stayed in the extreme northern lands with a calm look and seriously practiced his messy life skills. He was also exceptionally lenient towards her, as though the disciple-harming buff had suddenly been dispelled. Not only did his learning evidently improve, he even began to show concern for her in her daily life, and was becoming more and more like her real master, Yu Yan. Zhu Yao felt a little strange for no reason. She kept feeling that something was wrong with his attitude, yet she could not put her finger on it. It was impossible for the devil sealing grounds to be completely fine. She was worried about little Six and Xiaobai. Hence, she suggested to go and take a look. Yugu stared at her for a moment, so long that she thought he would object to it. However, she heard him sigh heavily. "You really want to go?" She nodded. Yugu sank into silence. The expression he was looking at her with seemed to be mixed with many emotions, making it hard for others to see through them. In the end, he still stroked her head and said with an unclear meaning, "Go." Zhu Yao's chaotic heart, however, miraculously calmed down. Even after flying out of the extreme northern lands, she still did not understand the meaning behind that expression. Raising her head, she looked at the horizon that was getting closer and closer. For some reason, she suddenly recalled the man standing on top of the gigantic tortoise's head. Her feet paused, she turned around, and headed in the direction she previously went. She did not even know why she wanted to go there, yet she faintly felt that there was something she wanted to obtain there. The horizon was getting closer and closer, and in her mind, everything that had happened ever since she arrived in this world flashed past. She hatched prematurely in the egg, and those inheritance stones on the terrace of revelations, The abnormal phenomenon of the earth shaking mountains, the gigantic bug on the tortoise's head, that strangely amiable man, the prophecy of the revelation of revelations, and the sudden godly energy that came when the seal was being repaired. Her mind was getting more and more chaotic until the gigantic tortoise's figure gradually appeared in front of her eyes, and within the fog, that man was still looking at her with a kind smile. A ding sound suddenly rang in her mind. Everything instantly connected into a single line, and all the confusion and puzzlement instantly disappeared. Zhu Yao, who knew the truth, simply wanted to say this. The hell? P.S. I went to the company for market research this afternoon and only returned home after 9, so I updated late. Sorry. Chapter 191. You're here? That man's smile was still exceptionally benevolent, as though he had long expected her to appear here. Zhu Yao took a deep breath. Black tortoise. His smile grew even more benevolent as he reached out his hand and waved at her. Zhu Yao simply felt an invisible energy dragging her forward and landing on top of that gigantic tortoise's head. You should call me father. The corner of Zhu Yao's lips twitched. She felt that she could pick up cheap parents everywhere recently. If you're my father, then who's my mother? His expression stiffened, and he helplessly shook his head, looking as though he could not do anything about her. You. Ha. My race has always been born from the heavens and the earth. How can there be a mother? Then what face do you have to make me call you father? It's not like your Li gang. I have a question. Zhu Yao returned to her original form and released her own godly energy, turning into a phoenix that was flashing with lightning sparks. Raising one of her claws, she asked, "Why do I look like this? Wasn't the black tortoise a combination of a turtle and a snake? For example, he was one. His feet were in the shape of a turtle, while his human form was formed from his snake form." The black tortoise smiled and simply reached out a finger, tapping on her head. Her mighty and domineering phoenix form earlier, with a plop, she turned into a green-furred tortoise. The phoenix is your illusory form, and this is your true form. Zhu Yao extended her head out of the tortoise shell to take a look, and for a moment, she felt like crying. Such a stupid form. She might as well be a bird. It isn't easy for my race to be born, and we're naturally skilled in transformations. Only when we truly mature will we be able to transform into our true forms. The black tortoise softly explained. As expected, a moment later, she once again returned to her phoenix form, and Zhu Yao immediately returned to her human form. The first person you saw when you were born must be a phoenix, which is why you transformed into a phoenix form. Zhu Yao recalled the day she hatched from her shell. The first person she saw was indeed little Six of the phoenix race. In the lightning phoenix form, was probably because it transformed into the form of her sword intent. Fortunately, it wasn't some strange thing like a caterpillar. Second question. Zhu Yao reached out 2 fingers. That sentence in the heavenly revelation. Nirvana and rebirth, banishment and beginning, banishment and beginning. What does that mean? Black Tortoise's expression darkened. After a while, he sighed deeply. It's a long story. Do you know that there are other places in this world that we don't know about other than the world we live in? I know. Zhu Yao nodded. She came from the divine realm after all. 3,000 worlds, after all. The black tortoise was taken aback and had a look of surprise on his face. After a while, he understood and continued, however. These 3,000 worlds were originally one. Huh. She really didn't know. With a wave of black tortoise's hand, the surrounding white fog slowly took on different colors and vivid images appeared. It was as if someone had suddenly played a special 3D movie in front of her. In the endless world, all kinds of races that she had never seen before flashed by one. He started explaining them one by one. Zhu Yao listened for exactly half an hour before she was able to clearly understand the cause and effect. Very simply, this was a tragedy caused by a cat fight. Originally, in that world, the ancient gods were the leading organization. After many years of peaceful rule, suddenly one day, a group of rebels appeared, the devil race. Their abilities were on par with the god race, and they often carried out terrorist attacks. The ancient gods tried to suppress them, but they were like cockroaches that couldn't be killed. Not only did they become more and more arrogant, their numbers also increased. The ancient gods sensed danger, and thus, an all-out war between the gods and devils began. However, at this time, the devil race had already matured. Although the ancient gods obtained the final victory, they paid a terrible price. More than half of the gods fell, while the devil race was merely sealed, existing like a ticking time bomb. Due to the overly powerful strength of the gods and devils, they caused an indelible impact on the world. The heavenly Tao was enraged, and the world began to collapse. The gods had nowhere to go. At the crucial moment, the black tortoise was born, and he even possessed a divine spark. Although his godly power was not as strong as the ancient gods, he possessed the shocking ability to transform, and was able to transform into mountains and rivers. The gods saw hope, and thus, they decided to gather half of the godly power of the surviving ancient gods. Using the power of the black tortoise's main body, they created a world to contain the gods that were punished by the heavenly Tao. However, the black tortoise's primordial spirit fell into an eternal slumber. In order to ask for the heavenly Tao's forgiveness, the gods even trapped the devil race, the source of all evil, within. Thus, this world was also called the land of exile by the gods. Ever since then, the gods had been guarding this seal, but even so, it did not stop the gods from falling, until only the last one was left. A few million years later, when the ancient gods were no longer able to stop the devil race, a turning point appeared. The god race began to appear. Dragons, phoenixes, and cheilants. These three races awakened their divine sparks one after another. As though they were born specifically to suppress the devil race, their bloodlines had a suppressive effect towards the devil race, and they were born with great enmity towards the devil race. And the world that collapsed back then also turned into 3,000 small worlds, each of them independent. Everything seemed to be developing in a good direction. Until the black tortoise woke up. Isn't it better that you're awake? Actually, if Zhu Yao had to say, the most unfortunate one was the black tortoise, right? Why didn't he do anything the moment he was born? All because the gods transformed into this world, and then fell into a deep slumber, not having the time to experience anything. Now that he had finally woken up, why did he still have such a sad look? The black tortoise shook his head. The godly power of the gods allowed me to create a world, and also allowed me to fall into an eternal slumber. My main body has already fused with this world, and this world is me. Initially, I would never wake up. Now that I'm awake, it can only prove. He reached out his hand to stroke the top of her head and lightly said, "Child, I'm about to die. This world has already reached its end." Zhu Yao's heart ached, and she fiercely widened her eyes. This was the first time she felt that the word bug on the tortoise's head was so piercing to her eyes. She finally knew what was going on with the bug this time. Yet, she would rather not know in the first place. This was clearly a dead end. In the past, she had always been clearing bugs. Now that she had returned, was she going to activate rescue mode? It begins with the profound beginning, and it will end with the profound end. This world began with me, so naturally, it will end with me as well. Is there no other way to stop it? Zhu Yao really did not expect that she would witness the true end of the world so quickly. Though in the past, when she fixed those bugs, she would see the scene of the end of the world in her precognitive dreams as well. None of them were as immersive as this one. There is. The black tortoise lowered his head and looked straight at her. Zhu Yao was startled. Me? You're a black tortoise as well. Your appearance is an opportunity bestowed upon this world by the heavens. But she can't. A slightly cold male voice suddenly interrupted his words. A white figure flashed in front of her, and Yugu suddenly appeared next to her. His face still carried a faint expression, but unexpectedly, a hint of coldness floated out. He did look a little like her master. You have seen it for yourself earlier. Her godly power is basically insufficient to support this world. Even if she inherits yours, it won't be enough. The black tortoise's expression grew even heavier. What Yugu said was indeed the truth, but, at the very least, it can support her for a period of time. This way, it won't help the world either. But other than her, there's no other way. This is her own decision. You should respect her. She's also Black Tortoise, Yugu solemnly said. This world will be destroyed in the end. The Black Tortoise lowered his head, as though all of his strength had been sucked out. But I can't just watch as I am. Looking at the two people who had already sunk into an extreme dilemma, Zhu Yao weakly raised her claws, successfully attracting their attention. Third question. Zhu Yao coughed and raised 3 fingers. Since both of you know that this world is already hopeless, then why don't you consider moving? Black Tortoise. There's actually such a method? Yugu. Why didn't I think of that? The two of them had dumbfounded expressions, as though they couldn't believe it. It was as if he couldn't believe that a dead-end problem had been solved with a single sentence. It still won't do. The Black Tortoise suddenly frowned again. According to what I know, 1,000,000 years ago, the world was split into 3,000 worlds, yet not a single one of them was stable, and there was the danger of collapse at any moment. You've already said that 1,000,000 years have passed. Who knows, the other worlds might have already stabilized. Those worlds were all more stable than this place, all right? Be that as it may, the Black Tortoise was still a little worried, but currently, Yugu is the only ancient god left. With his strength alone, he's basically unable to open the world-crossing heavenly door. What if I'm included? Zhu Yao once again raised her claws. You're saying... The Black Tortoise widened his eyes. Zhu Yao nodded. Even if I inherit your godly power, it won't be enough to support this world. Then, what if I use it to open the world-crossing heavenly door? This method is feasible. Yugu raised his head and looked at Zhu Yao. His eyes sank. However, forcefully opening the heavenly door is going against the heavenly Tao. When that time comes, you will definitely suffer the backlash of the godly power. Let's open it first. Zhu Yao waved her hands unconcernedly. She was already used to dying and dying. She might even be able to return to meet her master. Under Zhu Yao's persuasion, Yugu and the Black Tortoise had already approved of her relocation plan. Actually, Zhu Yao was still very confident in this operation. Since there was a bug in this world, that meant there was a chance to fix it. She did not dare to guarantee a 100% success rate, but at the very least, there was hope for survival. However, the opening location of the heavenly door was a little troublesome. This entire world was formed by the Black Tortoise, and every single part of it was a part of its body. However, the opening location had to be at the Black Tortoise's Dantian. The Dantian was where godly power was stored, and Zhu Yao could only inherit the Black Tortoise's pure godly power there and open the heavenly door. However, only after asking did she find out that the location was actually near the Nether Abyss. Her Dantian was located in such a dangerous place. Chapter 192. Zhu Yao thought that the mission this time would be very simple. Wasn't it just moving houses? But when he truly arrived at the Nether Abyss, he realized that he was too naive. The sudden awakening of the Black Tortoise caused the changes in this world to become more and more intense. Everywhere was affected, but the one affected the most was the land of seal demons. After the seal was broken the last time, the devil race once again rushed out of the seal. The god race, who had already suffered heavy losses, retreated step by step. They had no choice but to retreat to the Nether Abyss to prevent the devil race from merging with the devil chi inside. When Yugu and Zhu Yao rushed over, the devastation of the scene could no longer be described with words. The entire place was filled with devils shrouded in black smoke, and gods bathed in blood as they fought fiercely. The divine race had been forced to the point where they had nowhere to retreat, and the number of the devil race was increasing, as if they could never be killed off. Yugu summoned down countless heavenly lightning bolts before opening up a bloody path and charging in. There's no time. Let's go to the Black Tortoise's Dantian. Zhu Yao nodded. Releasing her divine sense, she faintly sensed that there was something calling out to her in front of her right, and she immediately flew in that direction. It was not until she arrived that she realized it was a pool. It was only the size of an ordinary swimming pool, and the water was not very deep. It was so clear that one could see the bottom. As soon as she walked in, the entire pool lit up with a white light. There were even faint flashes of lightning. The divine power was so dense that it seemed to be materializing. This was the divine power of the black tortoise. Zhu Yao was a little startled. Compared to the one she received when she repaired the seal back then, it was hundreds or even thousands of times stronger. There wasn't much time left. Zhu Yao quickly walked a few steps, and just as she was about to enter the center of the pool and accept the godly energy to open the world-crossing door, a terrified voice suddenly sounded from behind her. "Little sister." Xiaobai suddenly appeared beside the pool and stared at her nervously. "What are you doing?" Zhu Yao's heart skipped a beat. She knew that she would definitely meet Xiaobai here, but she didn't know that she was here to swim. Did he believe it? "I want to open the heaven crossing gate." World crossing heavenly gate. Xiaobai stared blankly, as if he'd thought of something, and the blood drained from his face completely. After a while, the corners of his mouth moved, revealing a smile that was warm like jade as usual, and he stretched out a hand. How could opening the heaven entrance be such an easy thing? "Little sister, be obedient. Come out first." Zhu Yao gritted her teeth and decided to ignore his words. As though he was a wild beast whose bottom line had been touched, the warmth and gentleness he had in the past had completely turned into ruthlessness and madness. However, how could the lightning formed from godly energy be so simple? In just a few moments, his body was already filled with wounds, yet he did not stop. Zhu Yao was trembling with fear as she watched. "Don't come any closer." Zhu Yao was a little anxious. This world is already doomed. As long as the heavenly door is opened, everyone can be saved. "Then what about you?" He raised his head and stared straight at her. Of course, she had logged off. Could it be that he knew the consequences of forcefully opening the heavenly door and was trying his best to stop her? If saving the world requires your life as the price, then what's the point of saving it? Xiaobai's surrounding aura instantly changed, becoming even more chaotic. The eyes he looked at her with were filled with a strange sorrow. His current appearance was exactly the same as that skinny little child when they first met. "Little sister, you clearly know that second elder brother only has you left. If even you're not around as well, then even if everyone is saved, what's the point?" Zhu Yao's heart skipped a beat. Only at this moment did she realize that he had never walked out from that experience of being abandoned. No matter how gentle his smile was on the surface, he was simply hiding it even deeper. That was a scar that could flare up at any moment. As long as his lightning spot was touched, it could flare up. And she seemed to be that lightning spot. "I'll be fine. I promise." She would be reborn, after all. "You can't promise." He had already walked to her side and pulled her into his embrace, as though he was going to strangle her. Burying his head into the side of her neck, he said with emphasis on every single word, "You promised that you wouldn't abandon me." Zhu Yao felt as though she had once again returned to that dark, sunless place. There was a skinny little child who was tightly hugging onto an egg, as though he was holding onto the belief that he was going to live on, unwilling to let go. Zhu Yao's heart skipped a beat, and for a moment, she hated herself a little. Why did she not notice Xiaobai's abnormality even after such a long time? Actually, she should have noticed it long ago, though he treated people gently on the surface. However, other than her, he had actually maintained a distance from everyone else. He was not even close to her mother, Qinyu, and because of her early hatching, he hated Little Sixth even more. He was still the one who treated her as his only support, the child who maintained hostility towards the world and treated her as a child with life. But Zhu Yao gritted her teeth. A white light flashed in her palm, and she pushed Xiaobai away. The lightning in the pool instantly disappeared, though her entire body seemed to be hidden within layers of lightning. She had never felt such immense godly energy in her body. Without hesitation, she quickly made a few hand seals and formed a formation with her palm facing down. With her palm facing downwards, she instantly released all of her godly energy. "No." Xiaobai, who was sent flying several hundred meters away, shouted out with a face filled with fear. In an instant, a golden light shone brightly, and within a radius of 30 meters, a heavenly pillar rose into the sky. It directly pierced through the sky, and in an instant, the entire sky distorted. Countless foreign illusions appeared in the sky like projections. There were lush forests, bustling streets, and blessed lands filled with practitioners. Every single one of them represented a world within the 3,000 worlds. The heavenly door opened. The sounds of battle between gods and devils instantly stopped. Everyone raised their heads to look at this strange scene. With a twist of her hand, Zhu Yao once again cast an art. Within the pillar of light, rays of golden light were instantly formed, heading towards the various gods and living beings. After the golden light caught onto them, they turned into things that looked like soap bubbles and flew towards the opened heavenly door. Zhu Yao's godly energy was rapidly disappearing, and she could only barely support the heavenly door, trying her best to allow as many living beings to pass through the heavenly door. As for which world they would end up in after entering the heavenly door, that was not something she could predict. Little sister, Xiaobai was trapped in the soap bubble as well, as he tried to get out. After all, Zhu Yao had inherited the black tortoise's ancient godly energy, so how could she let him out? Instead, she cast an art and had him float towards the heavenly door. Seeing that he was getting closer and closer to the heavenly door, Xiaobai's eyes instantly turned crimson. He struggled with all his might and even disregarded his own injuries, attacking the bubble that was already small in the first place. However, half of his strength was reflected back. Zhu Yao grew more anxious the more she watched, and her movements slowed down by quite a bit. This madman. Zhu Yao calmed her heart and planned to forcefully drag him over. Suddenly, the red light within the bubble shone brightly. With a pop, the bubble burst, and with a cry that resounded through the clouds, an entirely pitch-black phoenix flew into the sky. Streaks of black water slowly flowed around its body. Zhu Yao was completely dumbfounded. This was Xiaobai? How did he transform? That black phoenix merely appeared for an instant. After Xiaobai broke out of the bubble, he returned to his human form and flew towards her, attempting to stop her from continuing to open the heavenly door. However, he was stopped by a white figure. You Gu. Xiaobai's face was filled with cold intent. You dare to stop me? This is my disciple's own choice. Xiaobai's anger seemed to be about to materialize, as he immediately attacked him. You can watch as she dies, but I can't. He flung an icicle over. I'm going to save her. Those who stop me die. Zhu Yao simply focused on supporting the heavenly door until all of the bubbles had passed through the heavenly door. Only the two people in the sky and the devils that filled the sky remained. At that moment, she even had the mood to curse out loud. Mama's egg. Was this the time for internal strife? Yet, the two of them were fighting against the devils while happily fighting. Teacher, let him come over. Zhu Yao retracted a strand of godly energy and sent a voice transmission to Yu Gu in the sky. Xiaobai was already flying straight towards her. Little sister, hurry. Zhu Yao flung a wind art over, and before he could even react, she pulled the devilish brat into the pillar of light. She shouldn't be reasoning with him at a time like this. Shock, fear, heartache, disappointment, unwillingness, and many other emotions flashed across Xiaobai's face. His figure, however, slowly disappeared into the pillar of light. Only then did Zhu Yao puke out a mouthful of blood. She constantly released her godly energy, and she felt as though her entire body was about to be torn apart. Teacher, hurry and go in. She couldn't hold on for much longer. Yu Gu, however, did not reply. He simply reached out his hand towards her from afar and did a patting action on her head. He then turned to look at the devils that had already occupied the entire sky. I can't leave. Teacher. Zhu Yao grew anxious. I'm the last primordial god in this world. The heavenly Tao will not allow me to leave. Her teacher still had a calm expression on his face, as though he was not discussing a matter of life and death. Raising the corner of his lips, he suddenly gave her an extremely stunning smile. Disciple, I will accompany you. She suddenly sensed a familiar wave of divinity energy ripple, coming from Yu Gu's direction. An enormous wave of divinity energy spread out in all directions like fireworks, and wherever it went, the devils turned into ashes in an instant. Zhu Yao's godly energy had already dried up, and the heavenly door closed along with it. The familiar darkness began to invade her, and she suddenly recalled what Yu Gu's mystic art was. Devil smiting inscription, the only mystic art in this world that could exterminate devils. Her teacher said that he could only use it twice in his entire life, and this was the second time. At the very last second before she closed her eyes, she faintly heard him sigh. Chapter 193. Zhu Yao felt that she was descending, and there was a sense of weightlessness that could not be felt. Her surroundings were pitch black, as though she had fallen into a bottomless abyss. Her entire body felt weak and empty. Not to mention her ability, she couldn't even sense her own existence. There seemed to be an incessant whistling of the wind in the surroundings, and after a while, there seemed to be a faint sound of thunder. The rumbling sounds were extremely loud. Sure, there are still 3 more. I said I would wait. An unfamiliar voice floated over. It was intermittent and unclear, but it seemed to be coming from afar. Wake up. You must persevere. In the upper realm, the voice was very anxious, as if it had encountered a difficult problem, and it kept talking. Zhu Yao, however, felt her consciousness becoming increasingly blurry, and the sense of weightlessness was becoming more and more severe. Suddenly, as though she was trapped by some sort of seal, the weightlessness disappeared, and what replaced it was a sense of restraint that heavily wrapped around her. Unable to struggle free, she felt a sense of suffocation. The next one is coming soon. Wake up. The anxious male voice finally became clear. Just hold on a little longer. Just hold on a little longer. You can do it. Do you hear me? Sure. Another thunderclap resounded, and the man's voice was drowned in the thunderous roar. A familiar energy suddenly surged into her body. Only after Zhu Yao instinctively began to absorb it did she realize that it was actually pure lightning spiritual energy. As the spiritual qi entered her body, her suffocating feeling was immediately alleviated. However, the feeling of being bound was getting stronger and stronger, and her consciousness was getting more and more blurry. She didn't even have time to think as the man's surprised voice kept echoing in her ears. You're finally awake. There are still 2 more. Hurry up and guard your dantian. Focus and calm your qi. The last one. That's great. You did it. I knew you could do it. Sure, let's go up. It's good that you're fine. It's good that you're fine. Zhu Yao subconsciously felt it was strange. That unfamiliar male voice was clearly coming from the direction of her. Yet, those words were evidently not directed at her. What do you mean it's fine as long as you're fine? She was clearly busy, okay? Unfortunately, she didn't even have the energy to complain as she sank into darkness once again. When she opened her eyes again and woke up, she was lying on the bed. It was a soft and comfortable carved bed. The light muslin beside the bed fluttered in the wind. It was like a dream. She was sprawled on her back, and next to her lay a perfectly straight man. Zhu Yao felt her heart tremble, and her first reaction was to hurriedly check her own clothes. Other than a little disheveled, she found that she was dressed properly from the inside to the outside. Only then did she heave a long sigh of relief. Fortunately, her chastity and chastity were still intact. She turned to look at the side, and a familiar face was instantly imprinted into her eyes. Zhu Yao could not help but want to fuck herself, as she ruthlessly threw them back onto the ground. Master. She had actually returned. I wonder if it's too late to take off my clothes now? Hearing her voice, the person beside her opened his eyes slightly. His usually cold eyes unexpectedly revealed a hint of exhaustion. He merely glanced at her and replied, Master, what's wrong? Why was his voice so weak? Did she do something beastly to him last night? Zhu Yao's mind instantly went wild, as she began to recall various 18 forbidden scenes. If she really did something like that, I will take responsibility. Yu Yin reached out his hand to her head, and with a slight bit of strength, he pulled his stupid disciple into his embrace. Sticking close to her ears, he he gently said. It's fine. It's good that you're awake. Zhu Yao buried her head into his slightly cold embrace. Her breath was filled with a familiar scent, and her hands could not help but climb onto his chest. Who would stop her from committing a crime? Master, Amen, if you do this, I will commit a crime. To eat or not to eat, that was the question. A certain master did not understand. He simply habitually used his fingertips to stroke his disciple's hair. His ice-cold fingertips slid past the side of her face, and in an instant, the room was filled with ambiguity. Only when her hair was neatly draped behind her head did he casually reply. Amen. Ding. She simply felt her wolf blood instantly boiling, as though something was being sealed. What's wrong? Noticing her abnormality, Yu Yin frowned. The hands that were hugging her tightened, and the two of them pressed even tighter against each other. Are you feeling unwell? Zhu Yao gritted her teeth. My heart hurts. She was enduring it to the point where her heart, liver, spleen, lungs, and kidneys were hurting. Yu Yin frowned even tighter. Lowering his head, he looked towards her chest and subconsciously lifted her clothes. The hell! If she continued to endure it, she would be a grandson. With a flip of her body, Zhu Yao instantly pressed him beneath her. Straddling his body, she grabbed onto his collar with one hand, and then, in a cool and domineering manner, she forcefully pulled. It did not move. This was illogical. One more time. I'll pull. It still did not move. Pull again. No matter how much strength she used, not even a crease could be seen on Yu Yan's pure white clothes. There's actually such a high-quality collar in this world. I don't believe it. Zhu Yao simply grabbed onto one side of his collar with both her hands, and using all of her strength, she forcefully pulled to the side like a tug of war. 15 minutes later, a certain master's clothes were still neatly worn on his body. Zhu Yao, who had used up all of her strength, received a huge blow to her outlook on life. It was as though a bucket of cold water had fallen from the sky, drenching her completely. What kind of blow could compare to the Overlord's strong hook? But he was stuck at the first step of stripping clothes. Clearly, everything had been going smoothly in the past. Do you need help? Yu Yin kindly suggested. She couldn't have misheard, right? Zhu Yao was startled. She simply could not believe her own ears, and the light in her eyes instantly reignited. Can I? Yu Yin immediately sat up and carried his stupid disciple to the seat next to him. With an indifferent look, he retracted his hand, placed it on his own waist, and then pulled open his belt. Zhu Yao suddenly widened her eyes as she looked at the miraculous scene in front of her. He unhurriedly untied his belt, pulled his outer shirt, and pulled it down. That pure white clothes slid down his shoulders, his arms, his waist. Zhu Yao spat out a mouthful of saliva. She really wanted to wave the flag and shout, as a single word crazily flashed through her mind. Strip, 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 strip. Finally, the clothes that she was unable to take off after struggling for 15 minutes were taken off by him, and only a thin layer of inner clothing was left. Yu Yin held onto the outer shirt and turned to look at her with an unclear meaning. He then turned around and approached her. His two hands passed through her waist, forming a bed position, and slowly approached, closer and closer, and then the outer shirt was draped over her body. If you want this mystic robe, just say it. Pishi. Zhu Yao heard a shattering sound. That was her young maiden's heart that had passed away. She believed that a certain person would be enlightened. She was really stupid to the point of breaking through the heavens. A certain master, however, was still stabbing her with a serious expression. I have placed down a special defensive formation on this mystic robe. Normal people are unable to move it. Pooh. A steel blade pierced straight into her heart. However, the size is a little too big for you. Pooh. Damage bonus plus 1,000. If you truly like it, your master will help you change it to your size tomorrow. Pooh. Permanent damage to her heart plus 1. I'll also make something else for you while I'm at it. Amen. You've grown a little fatter. Pooh. Her health bar was empty. She didn't die. On the second day, after Zhu Yao woke up, she realized that she had actually returned to the Lightning Divine Hall. And her current avatar was not the newly released version 8.0 either, but 6.0. When Zhu Yao saw the face in the water mirror, she simply could not believe her own eyes. So this avatar even had a rewind function? Didn't I die? Zhu Yao turned to look at Yu Yin at the side. Yu Yao, you've been unconscious for 10 years. Yu Yin sighed. His expression sank a little as he reached out his hand to stroke her head. Fortunately, she had woken up. 10 years? Zhu Yao was startled. She had clearly spent several hundred years on the other side. When you were too far away from Fluorescent Wind Sect, you triggered that seal, causing your divine sense to be damaged, your heart and lungs to rupture, and you fell into a deep slumber. Yu Yin frowned. Your master sealed your heart meridian in order to preserve your life. In other words, I'm still in Xian. Zhu Yao stroked her own face. Suddenly, she recalled back when she turned into an egg. Something like this seemed to have happened as well. After she woke up, she returned to Fluorescent Wind Sect. Could it be that her black tortoise avatar in the other world was connected to an Xian? Souls could be transported between two worlds? And leaving Fluorescent Wind Sect was the key to activating the teleportation. Then if I'm currently in Lightning Divine Hall, will I? When you were heavily injured, that seal disappeared. That was why he brought her back to Lightning Divine Hall. In other words, she could no longer return to that world. Zhu Yao felt a little stifled in the depths of her heart. Suddenly, she recalled Yu Gu, who looked exactly the same as her master. Though she had successfully opened the heavenly door, he was the only one she could not save. And Xiaobai, she wondered how he was doing. Yu Yan's expression sank. Taking a step forward, he reached out his hand to brush away the hair in front of her forehead. Your injuries have yet to heal. Don't be rash in the future. Zhu Yao was startled as she turned to look at him. Aren't I fine now? Your injuries are a little strange. Yu Yin frowned deeply. Clenching his fists, he said, normal divine arts seem to be completely ineffective against you. Your master is only able to protect your heart meridian and has yet to find a way to cure it. You being able to wake up is something I did not expect as well. But clearly, she was fine. Her body was perfectly fine. Not the slightest bit. Master, you sealed my sense of pain? Not just that, only now did she realize that her 5 senses were very sluggish, and her body was unexpectedly heavy as well. This feeling was something she had never experienced before. Yu Yan's fingers trembled for a moment. Pulling her into his embrace, he gently consoled her. It's fine. He would always find a way to cure her injuries. Zhu Yao, however, felt a little uneasy, as she felt that this matter was a little fishy. Logically speaking, every time Realm Spirit arranged an avatar for her, he would be unexpectedly generous. It was impossible for such a situation to occur. In Xian's body might not be as simple as she had imagined. Yet, she could not figure out where the complexity lay. Suddenly, she recalled the reason for her injuries. Master, where's Yuing? Chapter 194. 3 days after waking up, Zhu Yao clearly felt that her body was deteriorating. Her entire body was filled with an indescribable heaviness, and even the slightest movement would cause her to sweat profusely. Her chest would also occasionally feel as though it was hard to breathe. Her master attempted to use divine energy to repair her damaged meridians, but it was to no avail. The moment the divine energy entered her body, it would automatically dissipate. It was as though she was born immune to divine energy. Grandmaster and Hall Master had both come to take a look, but they were helpless. Yu Yan's expression grew even heavier. He was someone who did not like to speak in the first place, and now he was even more silent. Zhu Yao simply could not understand. What was the point of her returning to this body? Could it be that it was just to let her die once more? She knew that she did not have much time left, and this body could at most hold on for a few more days. She was not afraid of death. At most, she would just have to change to another avatar. The only thing she was worried about was another matter. Master, I wish to meet Yuing. This was a dark prison. It was pitch black, and the only source of light was the formation seals that were everywhere in the air. Runes were flowing everywhere, and in the middle of the layers of formations, a black figure was currently suspended in the air. His two hands were spread open, and he was immobilized by the layers of runes. His head was lowered, and his expression could not be seen clearly. Then, a ray of light suddenly flashed in the darkness. As though it had split open in the air, it slowly opened into the shape of a door, and a white-robed figure slowly walked out from within. That person who had his head lowered the entire time finally raised his head. Although his face was pale to the point of not a single trace of blood could be seen, he did not have the slightest hint of a prisoner. He looked in the direction of the incoming person, and his eyes slightly narrowed. A sharp glint shone out, and he was filled with arrogance. "How is she?" His voice was low, yet it carried a hint of coldness. The incoming person did not reply, and simply frowned, sizing up the person in front of him. He instantly became a little irritated, and his eyes instantly turned a lot colder. With a threatening tone, he said, "Don't forget, if not to save her, why would I be here? You better hurry up, otherwise. I don't have much patience." The incoming person still did not speak. "Why aren't you replying?" He sized up the other party for a moment. Suddenly, as though he had thought of something, he widened his eyes. "What happened to her? Tell me." The black aura around him immediately spread out in all directions, bringing with it a terrifying aura. The surrounding runes seemed to be infected and began to become unstable, as if they were about to collapse. "You promised to save her. If anything happens to her, I won't let you go." The brows of the person who came furrowed even tighter. Looking at the person in front of him who was about to descend into madness, he finally let out a deep sigh. "Huh. Yuing." That figure that was about to lose control paused, and the surrounding black miasma instantly dissipated. He looked a little blankly at the person in front of him. "Big Sis Yao." The voice no longer had the arrogance it had earlier. Zhu Yao tore off the talisman on her body, and in a flash, she once again turned back into an Exion's appearance. "I had initially wanted to test you with a shape-shifting talisman, but I didn't expect that you're still like this. You're completely unrepentant." "Big Sis Yao," he anxiously explained. I'm not." "Not what?" Zhu Yao interrupted his words. "Not trying to vent your anger on others, and not trying to kill my master." Yu Ying was speechless. He slowly lowered his head, and a moment later, he muttered, "I simply want to save Big Sis Yao." "How?" Zhu Yao felt her head aching a little, as she solemnly said, "Yuing, do you know what you've done wrong?" Yuing lowered his head even further, as though he was a child who was being lectured by his parents. His fingers unconsciously tightened even more. "Big Sis Yao, you don't like devils? This has nothing to do with whether you're a devil or not. What I mind isn't your identity as a devil, but the way you do things, and your way of thinking." Yuing had a blank look. Zhu Yao sighed. "Why did you kill Su Nuyen?" "Because Big Sis doesn't like him. That's why I don't like him either." A hint of hostility flashed past Yu Ying's brows. "You want to kill him just because you don't like him? Then there are plenty of people I don't like. Are you going to kill all of them?" Yuing actually nodded obediently. Zhu Yao almost couldn't help but slap him and correct his distorted worldview. "Then what if there comes a day when I don't like you either?" Yuing fiercely widened his eyes. His expression was filled with fear and helplessness. "Big Sis Yao, I will listen to you. Don't dislike me, I will change. Since you know that you have to change as well, then why don't you give others the chance to repent?" Zhu Yao hardened her heart and continued. Yuing, no matter if it's a devil, a deity, or a practitioner of the lower realm, we're all the same. We're all the same. We're just human." "No," Yu Ying refuted. "Big Sis is Big Sis. You're different from others." "What's the difference?" "Yuing, you can't judge a person's life and death with your own viewpoint. If there comes a day when you don't like me either, are you going to kill me as well?" "No, I will never," he anxiously explained. "You will." Zhu Yao interrupted his words and coldly pointed out the truth. Twice. His expression instantly turned ashen. Zhu Yao had no choice but to continue. Yuing, you killed me twice, with your own hands. As though he had heard something terrifying, his entire body began to tremble. If my luck wasn't good, the one standing in front of you today would most likely be just a soul. Zhu Yao sighed. Yuing, I have always treated you as a little brother, as a family member. Your wrongdoings are my responsibility as your big sister. I didn't teach you well. So, I don't blame you for the first 2 times. Just treat it as atonement for your wrongdoings. Big Sis can forgive you as well. Big Sis. His eyes instantly burned with hope. But you have to remember. Her tone changed. The life and death of others cannot be judged based on your likes and dislikes. I don't care if you're a deity or a devil right now. You better learn first and be a good person. Do you hear me clearly? Amen. He obediently nodded. Zhu Yao heaved a sigh of relief. Actually, she was not confident that she would be able to twist this child's worldview back to its original state. However, she still had to give it a try. So what if he was a devil? Could it be that she had to kill him? Without even thinking about it, even if Yuing did not resist, she would not be able to make a move. She was just a human. She was just an ordinary human with flesh and blood. When her own child made a mistake, she could beat him, scold him, or even send him to prison to be reformed. However, no one would ever think of killing him. If I'm obedient, will Big Sis Yao never leave me again? Yuing raised his head and looked at her with a hopeful expression. Zhu Yao's heart skipped a beat. The hell, she actually forgot that he still had an Oedipus complex. This question, Yuing, you've grown up. It was time to be independent. His expression sank. Suddenly, a black light flashed around his body, and the initially intelligent youth instantly turned into a 5 to 6 years old little wimp. Is this enough? The corner of Zhu Yao's lips twitched. That's not what I meant. He instantly had a confused look. Then what should I do? Only then will Big Sis Yao not abandon Yuing. In reality, she was about to abandon him once again. Her current avatar was almost at the end of its usage. I will be back. Before that, just obediently stay here. Big Sis is leaving? Yuing grew anxious. With just a slight movement of his body, the surrounding runes shattered, and he flew straight towards her. The heavy and tight seals were like paper, completely unable to stop his footsteps. Not even a moment later, a little figure that only reached her waist hugged her. Different from the frail little figure he was when he was young, the current him was like a meaty little ball, as he said with teary eyes. Big Sis, don't abandon Yuing. The hell, acting cute is shameful. However, if this matter wasn't handled well, God knows what else Yuing would do. Yuing, my injuries can't be healed. His face paled, and his little head buried even tighter. Then I will find someone else. They will definitely be able to heal Big Sis. I won't. She had initially wanted to tell him that she would be fine, but halfway through her words, she changed her mind. Lowering her head to look at Yuing in front of her, she solemnly said, If you do something wrong, you must be punished. I've said that Big Sis is responsible for what you did as well. As expected, she felt the figure in her embrace instantly stiffen. But I promise you, I will definitely return. She wanted to plant a hint in his heart, a hint that whenever he did something wrong, she would be the one to suffer the consequences. She knew that this was a little despicable, as she was making use of his concern for her. However, she could not think of any other way to prevent him from doing anything unexpected while she was changing avatars. In the end, Yuing agreed to stay in the seal and not leave, until she came to fetch him. In the next few days, her body grew even weaker. That feeling of exhausting all the energy in her body with just a few steps made her feel like she was about to collapse. However, she still could not find the reason why she returned to this avatar. She constantly recalled the scenario she received in her dream. Su Nuyen died, and Emociencien no longer had any space left. Logically speaking, this bug should have been dealt with a long time ago, and Fluorescent Windsect would not be destroyed. It was impossible for those 4 phoenixes to come to the divine realm either. Zhu Yao could not understand. She watched as her body grew weaker and weaker, but she did not know why. As though there was some sort of energy supporting her, she just could not take the final step. 2 days later, She did not even have the strength to walk anymore. Her master carried her to the stone bench outside to bask in the sun. Leaning on her master's body, she listened to his heartbeat that was just inches away from her. She wanted to do something, yet she did not have the strength to move. The two of them did not speak. Chapter 195. She wanted to die and reincarnate as soon as possible. Suddenly, a red cloud appeared in the sky, as if the whole sky had been burned red, emitting a strange red light. Everything between heaven and earth was dyed red. Zhu Yao faintly sensed that something was about to break through the horizon. Something important was about to happen. Behind him, his master's figure suddenly flashed, and he flew up into the sky. He summoned bolts of heavenly lightning and attacked something on the right. Out of the way. A familiar voice rang out from within the thunder, and after a while, a small black figure walked out. It was actually Yu Ying. Why did he come out? Didn't he promise her to stay inside? Although he merely had the appearance of a child, the cold aura around his body was extremely frightening. He coldly stared at Yu Yin in front of him. I'm going to bring her away. Those who block me shall die. Yu Ying must have gone back on his words at the last moment, so he wanted to bring her away. Yu Yin immediately summoned his divine sword and fought. His brows were furrowed like fried dough twists, and his every word seemed to be frozen in ice. She's my disciple. What does that have to do with you? The demonic aura on Yu Yin's body instantly thickened. His eyes were as red as blood, and strange demonic scars began to appear on his bun-like face. You can watch her die, but I can't. Zhu Yao was startled. Why did she feel that this scene in front of her was a little familiar? She looked up at the fiery red sky, and something was about to rush out of her mind. Suddenly, a green light flashed from her body. She raised her hand and saw that her previously empty wrist was now surrounded by a circle of green light. It looked like a halo bracelet. Zhu Yao simply felt a ding sound in her mind, and the matter that she couldn't figure out earlier was instantly cleared up. Xiaobai had given her a bracelet made from divine parasol wood. The wudong tree was the home of all the phoenixes. To the phoenixes, a place with a wudong tree was a sign of home. So this was the truth behind why the Phoenix clan had come to the immortal world. It was no wonder that she was still alive despite dragging such a body. It was no wonder that Master could not heal her injuries. It was no wonder that even immortal Qi was ineffective against her. She had always thought that she had a double identity in her rebirth, but it turned out that she had been using the same identity all along. She had always been Black Tortoise, that green-furred tortoise. The sky was already turning fiery red, as though a bird covered in flames would fly in the next moment. Zhu Yao took off the bracelet on her hand and raised her head to look at the two who were still fighting in the sky. It was time. Master. The white figure in the sky paused for a moment and turned to look at the ground. Demon, Zhu Yao. She waved and smiled at him. She then turned her head to look at Yu Ying at the side and frowned. Yu Ying, you little bastard. Just you wait. This old lady will come back and smack your butt until it blossoms. Zhu Yao forcefully retracted her hand, and the bracelet, which was emitting a green light, shattered with a resounding sound, instantly sinking into darkness. At the same time, the red color in the sky disappeared without a trace. Congratulations, you're dead again. Please choose, chat or chat or chat. Zhu Yao looked at the familiar conversation window and raised her middle finger. She. Zhu and she and she and she as she as. She. She and. Ji. Ling Sun and as. You. Yi. And I. You can even tell if a soul is fat or thin? Zhu Yao rolled her eyes. To think that he would even fawn over her with such fake flattery. Realm Spirit. Enough with the nonsense. Explain to me what's going on with this alternate identity. She just wanted to confirm if her guess was correct. Realm Spirit. Actually, this is a set of armor. Quality and quantity are guaranteed. The price is discounted. Buy one get two free. Speak human language. Realm Spirit. In Xian is the black tortoise. They are the same person. As expected. The reason why they looked different was probably because of the black tortoise's innate ability to transform. There is one thing I don't understand. When I turned into the black tortoise, Enexion was only unconscious. If it was the same person, Enexion should have disappeared. Realm Spirit, because this time, you were the black tortoise, then Enexion. What do you mean? Realm Spirit, after that world was destroyed, you passed through the heavenly gate and went to the celestial world, becoming Enexion. That's impossible. I clearly turned into Shinsai first. Zhu Yao was startled, and then she suddenly recalled something. Spatial disorder? Realm Spirit, congratulations, you got it right. You're saying that my original avatar should have become that black tortoise egg to fix the bug in that world? She then passed through the heavenly gate and was reborn in the immortal world, becoming Enexion. However, due to spatial disorder, the time in between overlapped, so the black tortoise and Enexion became two different avatars? Realm Spirit, both correct. Avatars can exist at the same time, but the soul is unique. So you want me to travel back and forth between the two avatars? Realm Spirit, ho, don't mind these details. Your sister's mind. That's not right. I don't remember entering the world-crossing heavenly gate. Then why did she turn into Enexion? Realm Spirit, that was the case in the beginning, but a small variable appeared in the middle. In an instant, a video interface popped up, and the scene inside was the events that happened after she opened the heavenly gate back then. Back then, she had already fainted, and the world had already begun to collapse. The mountains were collapsing, and the earth was splitting apart, just like a doomsday movie. Suddenly, in the middle of the ruins, a man's figure appeared. Black Tortoise, Zhu Yao exclaimed. She did not know what the Black Tortoise did, but the world-crossing heavenly gate which had disappeared earlier once again opened. She saw herself and Yugu being enveloped by the same bubble, and then they were sent into the heavenly gate. Realm Spirit, the Black Tortoise used the power of his primordial spirit to open the heavenly gate, sending your avatar and Yugu's soul into the heavenly gate. That's why you turned into Enexion. The scene changed, and suddenly, they arrived at another world. On the screen, a man and a woman were currently facing their ascension lightning tribulation. The man's lightning tribulation had already ended, and he was currently standing within the light of guidance. As for the woman, she was evidently on her last breath after being struck by lightning. The next heavenly lightning bolt had already struck down, and at the same time, a green light suddenly flew out from the sky. It merged with the heavenly lightning bolt and charged straight towards the woman who was facing her tribulation. The green light stopped at the woman's stomach as well, and the lightning tribulation was completely absorbed by that light as well. That's me. Zhu Yao pointed at the green light with a dumbfounded expression. She suddenly recalled the unfamiliar man's shout she heard when she woke up for the second time. Could it be? She carefully looked at the woman's face. Sure. The Black Tortoise sent her to cross worlds, and due to the spatial disorder, she returned to the past. Along with the heavenly lightning bolt, she fell into Inshure's body, and then she arrived at the divine realm in the form of a divine fetus. Enexion was her from the beginning to the end? Then, the reason why Enexion had been in a deep slumber ever since she was born was because she had used up all of her godly energy when she opened the heavenly gate? Realm Spirit, your avatar reincarnated into a divine fetus and was born together with Inshure. That's why you can't leave her side within 50 kilometers. So the reason she couldn't leave wasn't Fluorescent Wind Sect, but this old lady Inshure? After that, she went to Lightning Divine Hall because her body was already completely ruined, and she was merely relying on the tiny bit of godly energy from the Parasol Wood bracelet to support herself. That was probably why that restriction was ineffective. Those 4 phoenixes in my dream, they appeared in the divine realm because of the bracelet Xiao Bai gave me, right? Realm Spirit, that's right, dear. Initially, the worlds transported through the realm-crossing heavenly gate are random. However, if you have the Parasol Wood bracelet, the phoenixes would instinctively be drawn over. The divine realm cannot withstand the simultaneous appearance of so many gods. That's why the bug you have to fix in the divine realm is the Parasol Wood bracelet, you know? Without the bracelet, the phoenixes would be transported to different worlds. I'll give you 32 likes. Then what about Xiaobai and Yugu? Zhu Yao asked. Realm Spirit. You know that Yugu had already? So even if he enters, he can only reincarnate. As for Xiaobai, the interface of the video flashed once again. Within the golden, heavenly light, a black phoenix was currently attacking with all its might, trying to escape. However, all of its attacks were reflected back by the golden light. The blackness on its body grew heavier, and even its figure was becoming blurry. Zhu Yao frowned as she watched. Her heart throbbed in pain. Realm Spirit, the heavenly gate is the light of the heavenly Tao. No one in the three realms can resist it. As expected, the golden light shone brightly, and Xiao Bai's figure was scattered, being split into two and drowned within the light. Realm Spirit, the two of them are the only ones who reincarnated into other worlds after their divine sparks fell. Then where did they reincarnate to? Realm Spirit, about that. I know even if you don't tell me. Zhu Yao sighed. She finally figured out what she couldn't figure out earlier. Yugu is my master, and Xiaobai is Yuing, right? Realm Spirit, this can explain why Yugu looks exactly the same as Master. In the end, she was just playing the prelude. When I opened the heavenly door, Xiaobai had already turned into a devil, right? That's why Yuing is a devil. Hence, ever since he first saw her, he liked to stick close to her. Realm Spirit, I'll give you a thumbs up for your wit. Wit your sister. Damn, this bug is too complicated. And it even involves the torment of the past and present lives. My heart is so tired, you know? Are you sure I'm really fixing a bug? Realm Spirit, Ayaya, didn't you do a great job? And you even saved the entire god race. Why do I feel like I've been schemed against by you? Realm Spirit, Little Yao Yao, how can you think of me like that? Cut the crap. Speak. Just who the hell are you? To be able to know the past and present lives of the god race like the back of his hand, without leaving anything out, he was definitely not a simple figure. She felt that the more she knew, the more worried she was about Realm Spirit's identity. Those bugs that she fixed looked like they were all high and mighty, like stopping the apocalypse and saving the world. However, she couldn't find the reason why Realm Spirit wanted her to do these things. Hence, she couldn't help but worry. Behind this, might there be an even bigger conspiracy hidden? Realm Spirit, this person, in the future, don't say anything about the future. I want to know right now. If you want me to do things for you, you have to show me some sincerity at the very least. Otherwise, I will go on strike. In any case, I don't want to return to my original world anymore. You can't threaten me even if you don't want to send me off. On the contrary, she was like a dead pig that wasn't afraid of boiling water. Realm Spirit sank into silence, as though he was considering this problem. A moment later, a sentence appeared on the screen. Chapter 196. Realm Spirit's words sounded rather scary. However, who knows if you're telling the truth? I swear upon the heavenly Tao. Suddenly, a man's voice resounded in the surroundings. Zhu Yao, who was used to monologues, was shocked. The hell? So you actually know how to speak? Realm Spirit, don't you think that typing is more advanced? He's a literary youth. Advanced your sister. All right, at the very least, she knew he was a man. Since he had already said so much, and even swore upon the heavenly Tao, she would believe him once more. An oath made by the heavenly Tao was supervised by the heavenly Tao. If one were to violate the oath, as long as it was within the three realms, no one would be able to escape from the heavenly Tao's punishment. What's the next mission? Realm Spirit. It's a world that's about to collapse. As expected, it's dangerous. Wait a minute. In other words, the bug isn't in the divine realm? The hell? Then what about my master? Realm Spirit, considering the difficulty of the mission, you're allowed to bring your family along. That's more like it. But how are you going to bring them along? Realm Spirit, seeing that we're old friends, I'll give you another achievement. Achievement? What the hell is that? Realm Spirit, depart, dear. A white hole and a white tomorrow are waiting for you. Wait a minute. Speak clearly. Hey. Before Zhu Yao could even finish speaking, her vision darkened, and a loading bar flashed past her eyes like a train. She had a bad premonition. When Zhu Yao once again regained consciousness, she felt her entire body was warm. There was a fresh and natural smell around her. She couldn't help but take a deep breath before opening her eyes. In front of her was a vast expanse of greenery, but the trees were strangely short. With a single glance, not a single tree could reach her height. Only when a white beast scuttled out from the thicket did she realize that it wasn't the trees that were short, but she was too tall. Could it be that her character this time was a giant that was even taller than the trees? Oh no, she would rather be a dwarf. Zhu Yao was going crazy, only to see that white little beast suddenly walk over and stop beneath her feet without the slightest bit of fear. Looking around, she turned her back, raising one of her hind legs. A warm current carrying a unique scent instantly poured onto her body. Fuck, this bastard actually peed on me. I'm going to castrate it. Zhu Yao trembled in anger. However, she realized that she was unable to move. She used all the strength in her body, yet she was unable to move a single step. On the other hand, a large number of leaves fell from the sky and scattered on the ground. Only then did she realize what was going on. She turned into a tree. The white little critter finally finished its business. It used its hind legs to dig the ground a few times and set off a large amount of dust, burying the evidence of the crime. Only then did he swagger away. Zhu Yao couldn't even raise her middle finger. There's a big tree here. A sharp sound rang out, and she felt two fluttering sounds in her ears. A colorful bird landed on her head. Moreover, it was jumping around excitedly among the branches, chirping, "What a beautiful tree! I like this tree. Hee. Thank you." Being praised by a bird didn't give him any sense of accomplishment. The branches are beautiful, too, and the leaves are beautiful. I've never seen such a beautiful tree. No matter how beautiful it was just a tree. Only such a beautiful tree can match my feathers. I want to make a nest here. What? Amen. I need to first dig a hole. No. Before she could even stop it, that strange bird had already begun to madly peck at her body. Zhu Yao felt as though she had received plus 1,000 damage. I can't penetrate it. That strange bird suddenly stopped. Looking at the tree trunk that was as good as new, it suspiciously tilted its head. Then, it ferociously pecked once again. But not a single mark was left on the brown tree trunk. It once again tried a few times, but it was to no avail. Only then did it fly away in disappointment. As it flew, it even turned its head back and took a few glances at her. Zhu Yao heaved a sigh of relief. She faintly felt that the warm current in her body had saved her. Earlier, when the bird was madly pecking her, the warm current had automatically gathered at the point where she was pecked. It seemed like she wasn't a normal tree, and at the very least, she could be considered as a tree demon. So powerful. A tender voice suddenly rang out. Zhu Yao was shocked as she anxiously looked around. Another strange little animal couldn't have appeared, right? Here. I'm below. She lowered her head and looked around. After staring for a long while, she realized that the voice seemed to be coming from a small tree below. This tree knows how to speak? The moment the small tree spoke, it instantly attracted a series of replies. A large tree that suddenly appeared. You're amazing. Even that bird couldn't bite you. That's right. Even the trees in this forest can't do that. You can definitely cultivate into a demon. I'm so envious. It's no wonder you can suddenly appear. A large tree that suddenly appeared. Amazing. Zhu Yao was stunned. It was as though the surrounding plants had instantly activated the ability to speak, as they began to chatter and discuss about her. She could even faintly see the looks of admiration from the bodies of those small trees. Had this world activated its fantasy mode once again? This wasn't the end. Zhu Yao suddenly felt her feet being entangled by something. She was so frightened that her entire body bounced a little, and a large number of leaves once again fell. A large tree that suddenly appeared. I just wanted to shake hands with you. The small tree closest to her, shyly and timidly said. The roots that stretched out from the ground earlier were its hands? Those were clearly feet. All right? Can I? The small tree trembled. Its voice was filled with disappointment. The corner of Zhu Yao's lips twitched. She faintly felt as though she had shattered a young man's heart. She had no choice but to bite the bullet and reply. You can. Great. The roots under the tree once again stretched out and entangled her. A moment later, they loosened again. The small tree instantly turned green. A large tree that suddenly appeared. You're so nice. In the future, we'll be neighbors. I'm called 3 feet tall tree. The hell was a 3 feet tall tree? Me too. Me too. A tree not far in front of it trembled as well. I want to shake hands as well. I'm a 5 feet tall tree. When it said that, the surrounding trees began to introduce themselves one after another. Me too. A 10 feet tall tree. I'm a white tree. I'm a green tree. I'm a 3 branches tree. I'm a tree beside. I'm Zhu Yao. Such a casual name. Did your parents create it? Thin tree roots stretched out from the ground. Zhu Yao bit the bullet and shook their feet one by one. Only then did the small trees retract in satisfaction. A large tree that suddenly appeared. How did you cultivate into a demon? A small tree asked. It seemed like they had already given her the name, a large tree that suddenly appeared. I just need to absorb spiritual energy. Earlier, she sensed that there was spiritual energy in this world. In other words, she had once again returned to the lower realm. What spiritual energy? The small trees shook their leaves one after another, expressing their confusion. It's spiritual energy. How was she supposed to explain this? You'll understand once you feel it. The small trees blankly shook their leaves. After Zhu Yao explained in detail the method to absorb spiritual energy into one's body, in order to prevent them from continuing with their endless questions, she found an excuse to sleep and no longer spoke. In the days after that, she lived in the midst of all sorts of strange questions. She did not know if it was because she had turned into a tree as well, but she could hear the sounds of all plants and animals. Although every single plant had a different personality, not a single one of them had a burning curiosity, and they would usually ask her questions until she had nothing to say. Under this pressure where the entire world wanted to chat with her, Zhu Yao's unprecedented determination to cultivate was ignited. As she constantly absorbed the wood's spiritual energy in the air, she could feel the warm current in her body growing stronger. She definitely had to leave this place. A month later, the warm current gathered into a river and filled her entire body. 2 months later, her branches were even sturdier than before. 3 months later, she managed to cultivate out her divine sense. For months later, all of the spiritual energy suddenly surged towards her branches, as though there were signs of a breakthrough. Finally, 5 months later, she bore 2 fruits. Why are they fruits? Damn, shouldn't they be transforming? Why did so much spiritual energy surge towards her, yet they turned into 2 fruits? And why did the 2 fruits look different? One was black, and the other was white. What the hell was that? Did she bear the 8 trigrams? Zhu Yao had the urge to pull Realm Spirit out and give him a good beating. What kind of lousy avatar did he give me? Did she transmigrate to QQ Farm? You, Yao? A familiar voice suddenly sounded, carrying a hint of doubt. Master! Zhu Yao was startled. She looked around, yet she was completely unable to see his shadow. Look up. Zhu Yao looked up, yet there was only an empty sky. To the right. Zhu Yao adjusted her view. There was nothing on the right either. Since when did Master like to hide and seek? She suddenly heard a light sigh. You, Yao, I'm on your body. What did he mean? Zhu Yao blankly glanced at her own tree. Her eyes swept past the 2 fruits that had just grown. The white one seemed to have moved a little earlier. Zhu Yao felt as though a bunch of grass mud horses were galloping past her mind. It can't be, right? Master? Emin, why did you turn into a fruit? This was illogical. Do you still remember the bracelet you crushed when you were a virgin? Yu Yin asked. Of course she remembered. That was a bracelet made of parasol wood. There was a spatial mystic art on that bracelet, and it had an extremely strong restrictive force. Yu Yen slowly said, "After you crushed it, the space shattered, and your master was swept into it as well. After that, I was here." Spatial mystic art. She recalled that back then, Xiaobai seemed to have given her a storage bracelet. The hell? So shattering that bracelet would cause a spatial explosion. Most probably, her master was subconsciously sucked into her divine sense, which was why he was reborn together with her. So this was what Realm Spirit meant when he said she was allowed to bring her family along. Realm Spirit, come out. I guarantee I won't beat you to death. Your divine sense is weak. I can't converse with you for long. Remember, be careful. His voice grew weaker, and in the end, she could no longer hear his voice. Zhu Yao called out a few times, but there was no response. At that moment, she was a little worried, as she did not know if anything would happen to her master. She worriedly looked at her own tree branch. Wait a minute. If the white fruit was her master, then what was the black one? Big Sis Yao. Chapter 197. He was on a business trip with 2 family members. Business mission, unknown. Ever since the family of the 2 fruits made their presence known that day, they hadn't made another sound, as if everything that had happened that day was just an illusion. Zhu Yao, however, began to cultivate even harder to see if there was any chance for her to help the 2 of them. Zhu Yao suddenly recalled Sesame in the past. He had reincarnated several times along with her as well. After coming to the upper realm, she sent it back to the demonic immortal continent and never summoned it again. Now that there were suddenly 2 more humanoid summoned beasts, he was really not used to it. She could only hope that her rebirth would not affect her master and Yu Ying in any way. As Zhu Yao worried, she worked hard to absorb spiritual energy. After a few more months, she faintly felt that she was showing signs of transforming. Her spiritual aura was overflowing, and the whole tree was light. Zhu Yao was excited. After being trapped in the same spot for so long, she could finally move. In an instant, she felt great. As he continued to absorb the spiritual qi, he thought about how he should transform into a human form. At the very least, he had to make a domineering entrance. Suddenly, a person walked over from the forest. It was a man dressed in an azure robe, and he looked very much like a passerby. As he walked, he sighed heavily. As though he was tired from walking, he stopped at Zhu Yao's feet and sat down. Suddenly, as if he had thought of something sad, he sniffed and cried bitterly while holding her in his arms, snot and tears running down his face. Zhu Yao, whose face was suddenly smeared with snot and tears. "Master, I've let you down. You're letting me down, my beautiful image," however. He cried even more bitterly. Snot and tears flew together, and his saliva and sweat blended into the sky. She even pulled down her emerald green leaves and wiped her face. Zhu Yao instantly felt her anger rising in an instant. However, the man still felt that it was not enough. He twitched a few times and actually began to untie his belt. Fuck, what is this guy trying to do? Not only were they not civilized, but they also wanted to act like hooligans. He already looked like a passerby. What face did he have to act like a hooligan? The man gritted his teeth and said in a low voice, "Master, don't worry. Your disciple will definitely not bring shame to the sect. You've already insulted her. Stop rubbing your snot on her, hey? I'm just a tree, begging to be spared. I will die here today, in the name of the entire sect." Namud? Does he want to commit suicide? The man gritted his teeth and pulled his belt out in a domineering manner. He picked up one of them and threw it at her branch with an expression as if he was not afraid of death, and hung it on her branch. He was going to hang himself. Holy shit, it was still on her body. The man tied a dead knot on both ends and shouted, "Master, please forgive your disciple for being unfilial." Zhu Yao simply felt her heart skip a beat. The man grimaced as he grabbed the knotted belt and stood on his tiptoes. Voila! His pants fell. Zhu Yao felt as though her eyes had received 1,000 points of damage. Perhaps the man also felt that hanging naked did not match his loyal image. So he let go of the belt in his hand and bent over to pull up his pants. He grabbed his pants with one hand and reached for his belt with the other. In order to prevent the world from being destroyed, Apui, in order to prevent a second injury to her eyes, Zhu Yao silently raised her tree branch. Although she had yet to take on a human form, with the spiritual energy she had been cultivating for so many days, she was still able to move her tree branch. The man reached out his hand a few times, but was still unable to reach it. He had no choice but to jump up and reach it. As he jumped, the pants in his hand once again began to prove the importance of gravity. As it began to fall, the man had no choice but to lend a hand. He grabbed onto the two ends of his pants with both hands and tied a knot. After confirming that it would not fall, he began to exert strength to reach the belt in the air. How could Zhu Yao let him have his way? With a twist of the tree branch, she purposely acted as though she was being blown by the wind and swung the hanging belt to another branch. Great, he was completely unable to reach it this time. It was worthy of celebration. The man looked at the belt above his head and was a little dumbfounded. After being stunned for a moment, his eyes once again began to redden. The corner of his lips trembled, as though a flood was about to erupt. Zhu Yao simply felt her heart skip a beat, as she had a bad premonition. Wah! As expected, the man's unstoppable tears, which resembled the surging waves of the Yellow River, gushed out. Heavens, am I not even allowed to die? Sure, don't die in front of me. To think that I, Kuang Pu, who has been wise my entire life, am going to suffer such humiliation today. The heavens are really blind. I merely took your belt. When did I humiliate you? I have let down my ancestors, let down my sect, and let down my master. So, don't let down me anymore. The man fiercely sniffed. With a wave of his hand, he casually grabbed a handful of green leaves and aimed it at his face, which had turned into a mess. Zhu Yao's eyes suddenly widened. She simply felt a surge of anger rushing straight into her heart. Opening her mouth, she roared out, "You beast, let go of my leaves." The man was startled. He simply felt his surroundings suddenly brighten, and something in his hand was pulled back. The huge tree in front of him instantly disappeared, and a green-clothed young girl appeared, coldly glaring at him. The scene was silent for a second. A miserable cry instantly pierced through the sky. Even Zhu Yao, who had just taken human form, trembled from fright. Yet, the man was already like a headless fly, scurrying about. "Demon! Ah! Master! Master! Save me! Save me!" "Ah!" Zhu Yao. In his fluster, he fiercely knocked into a small tree at the side, and his buttocks fell onto the ground. 3 feet tall tree, you've worked hard. Hey! The corner of Zhu Yao's lips twitched. Looking at the man who was already trembling on the ground out of fear, she said, "You're a practitioner. Why the hell are you afraid of a demon?" Who? Who said that practitioners aren't afraid? The man weakly looked at her. No, no, don't eat me. I don't taste good. Who wants to eat you? She would respect anyone who could eat his face that was filled with tears and snot as a man. Master said before, demons eat humans. Apart from plants. You. What kind of demon are you? Didn't he watch her take human form earlier? Tree demon. Tree? You're that tree earlier? The man was startled. Raising his head, he realized that the huge tree earlier had disappeared. Glancing at her, he instantly heaved a long sigh of relief. You should have said so earlier. So you're a tree demon. I thought you wanted to eat me? Zhu Yao's face darkened. Don't you want to die? Oh, right. The man was startled for a moment, as though he had just recalled his goal. In an instant, sorrow welled up within him, and his tears began to flow again. Little tree demon, are you trying to persuade me by turning into a human? She simply didn't want him to slap her face. Ha, little tree demon, don't try to persuade me. I, Kuang Yi, no longer have anything to live for. This world is filled with so much suffering. Just let me go with the wind and be free. Hey, little tree demon, where are you going? Zhu Yao couldn't be bothered with him, and instead hastened her footsteps. Don't go, let me finish. The man pounced forward and hugged onto her leg. He actually wanted to rely on her? Let go. I'm already in such a miserable state. Yet you have the heart to leave me here? Yes. The man was startled. Didn't they say that plant demons are the purest? Little tree demon, how can you be so sociable? Let go. I'm not letting go, unless you hear me out. She took a deep breath. Calm down, calm down. The weather was so beautiful, yet she was so irritable. Not good, not good. The fist was obedient and went back. She finally understood. This guy basically didn't want to die. He just wanted someone to roast him. Otherwise, why would a dignified practitioner use a method like hanging himself, which was basically impossible to kill? Speak. If you still don't speak, this old lady here will beat you up. I'm Kwang Pu, a disciple of Baluo sect. The man sighed and began to narrate his bitter past. One was called Kwang Piao, the other was broken. Wasn't this name a little too creative? The cause of this matter was very simple, and it could be summed up in 5 words. He was dumped. He was a chamber disciple of a sect master of a cultivation sect, and he had a marriage agreement with another sect's sect master's disciple since young. They had already agreed on it, and after he built his foundation, the two of them would hold a dual cultivator ceremony. In the end, when he finally built his foundation, he went to ask for her hand in marriage, but the lady went back on her words and refused to marry him no matter what. You're a man. It's just a broken heart. Is there a need for you to cry like this? Isn't it embarrassing? Zhu Yao took a step back in disdain. You don't know this, but if this marriage doesn't go through, Blue Parasol sect won't send disciples to support our Baluo sect. Then, after the next beast wave, we will fall to a third-rate sect. He said with a defeated look. Before I left, Master had instructed me again and again that this matter must definitely go through. Oh, so it was a marriage of benefits. And this marriage was decided by my Grandmaster. My Grandmaster had once shown kindness to the sect master of Azure Sky sect. Who would have thought that after Grandmaster fell, they wouldn't acknowledge it? This was very normal, wasn't it? It was a marriage of benefits, so naturally, benefits would come first. If there were no benefits to be gained, they would naturally fall out. He rubbed his face, sniffled, and said, suddenly, as though he had thought of something, he said with an infatuated look, though that junior martial sister Yi Ling's beauty is so beautiful that it could captivate even the birds and put the flowers to shame, like a bright pearl in the night sky. But I didn't marry her because of her looks either. Ho ho. The corner of Zhu Yao's lips twitched. You just fancied her looks, right? But, it's fine if she doesn't want to marry me, but she actually said I'm ugly. His heart was filled with tears. How am I ugly? How am I ugly? How am I ugly? So that's what you're concerned about? Zhu Yao silently glanced at his face and added another stab. She's not wrong either. Kwang Pu was startled, and then he fiercely widened his eyes. Little tree demon, you actually said that as well. I don't want to live anymore. He looked as though he wanted to ram his head into a tree and seek death. Have a safe trip. I won't be sending you off. Zhu Yao waved her hands. Kwang Pu's legs paused. He didn't know whether he should ram his head or not. In the end, he could only find himself an excuse. My death will be in vain, but if I don't marry Ling what will happen to the sect? You can change to another sect for a marriage, Zhu Yao suggested. No way. He stood up in an instant and looked at her with a reproachful look. How can you say that? My feelings for junior martial sister Ling are as clear as the sun and moon and will definitely not change. We can only blame ourselves for not being fated with each other in this lifetime. Chapter 198. Zhu Yao could not be bothered to listen to his nonsense. While Kwang Pu was immersed in his self-pity, she quickly left the forest. Realm Spirit said that the mission this time would be extremely difficult. She had yet to receive the storyline, so she had to be extra careful. She touched the pocket next to her and there were two bulging things inside. Zhu Yao carefully took them out. They were two fruits, one black and one white. They were the two fruits on her tree. After she turned into her human form, they were in her pocket. Master? Yuing? There was still no response from the two fruits. Zhu Yao sighed and decided to leave this place first. She walked out of the forest, and suddenly, a huge manor appeared in front of her. The Vermilion Gate was extremely grand, and there were even two imposing lions at the entrance. The surroundings were vermilion walls, and she could faintly see the small pavilions inside. This manor occupied a very wide area, and she could not even see the end of it. It could be seen that the owner was quite powerful. The only thing lacking was to write the words, "I'm very rich," on the door. Before Zhu Yao could even approach, she could hear the unrestrained discussions in the surroundings. Look, look, there's another one. How pitiful. The clothes of that woman from a few days ago are still in the well. The tree beside the well has already told me several times that the soil there has become smelly. Ha, someone is going to be tricked again. This lady looks like a good person. If she were to be eaten by the stinky fox, it would be such a pity. That's right, that's right. She looks so friendly. I like her. Why don't we remind her to not let her enter the manor? All right. Hurry, and remind her. Walala. Zhu Yao was instantly drenched in tree leaves. She turned to look at the two trees by the side of the road, and the corner of her lips twitched. She silently plucked off the leaves on her head and decided to ignore them and continue walking. She looked at me earlier, and she looked so happy, but she still went that way. What should we do? We have to stop her. The stinky fox will eat her. Hurry, we can't let her continue walking. Splat! A tree root suddenly appeared on the flat road. Zhu Yao's feet clattered, and she almost fell onto the ground. She sighed, pretended not to see it, and walked around it. However, the two trees seemed to have a bone to pick with her. With every step she took, more and more roots appeared under her feet. Even if you don't let me enter the yard, you should at least let me walk. She had to go in this direction to get out of the forest. Zhu Yao let out a deep sigh. She had no choice but to turn around and walk towards the two busybodies. She placed her hand on one of the trees. I say, can the big tree on the left let me walk properly? The tree was stunned and said in disbelief, Is she talking to me? Yes, it's you. I'm talking to you. Zhu Yao nodded. The big tree shook the leaves on her head again. Big tree on the right. Did you hear that? She can actually hear us. You even know my name? So the big tree on the left was its name. Did all the trees in the world have the same naming style? New girl, I like you. The big tree on the left shook proudly. I like you too. The big tree on the right didn't want to be outdone and shook its leaves on her head. Stop shaking. If you keep shaking, you're going bald. The corner of Zhu Yao's lips twitched as she asked, Why are you two blocking me? The two big trees were startled. A moment later, they explained. That yard was transformed by a fox. We saw many girls entering it and never coming out again. They must have been eaten by that fox. That's right. New girl, don't go in. You'll be eaten. So there was a fox demon living inside, and it even ate girls as food. It seemed like it was a male fox. Do you know what level that fox demon's cultivation is at? She had just taken human form, which was equivalent to a human foundation practitioner. It would be best if she didn't get into conflict with others. What's cultivation? The two big trees shook their tree skills. Great. It seemed like these two trees had never cultivated before. But we know something else. Seeing her disappointment, the big tree on the right hurriedly added, Amen. The big tree on the left said as well, I know it's an ugly yellow fox. That's right. It doesn't like to be clean either. It often rolls around on the ground, and it even likes to lick its own fur with its tongue. And it never bathes. This yard has been here for 5 years, and it has never bathed once. And it never brushes its teeth, and it has bad breath. Every time a girl enters, it would even shamelessly bite the girl's lips. The two big trees began to ridicule one after another for half an hour. Zhu Yao was dumbfounded as she listened. Initially, fox-shaped demons were known for their beauty. Yet, in their mouths, why did it become a sloppy king? Zhu Yao silently lit a candle for that fox demon. After thanking the two big trees, she promised that she was only passing by and did not have any intentions of entering the yard. Only then did the two of them let her through. Before she left, the two trees said their goodbyes as they crazily shook their branches at her. Zhu Yao's expression darkened. She hurriedly walked towards the entrance of the yard. Just as she was about to make a detour around the yard and head towards the south, the vermilion door, which had been tightly shut the entire time, suddenly creaked open. "Miss, please wait. The sky is already dark. I believe you won't be able to make it to the market today. Why don't you stay here for the night?" Next to the door stood a man. His facial features were picturesque, and his skin was as smooth as a fetus. Dressed in a long white robe, he held a folding fan in his hand and had an indescribable air of wanton flirtatiousness. His eyes were slightly narrowed, and for some reason, he gave off an enchanting aura that could hook people's hearts and souls. Looking at this man whose entire body was expressing the words, "I'm very handsome," Zhu Yao did not know why, but the two trees' voices earlier suddenly surfaced in her mind. He hasn't bathed for 5 years. In an instant, all of the warmth and charm were completely shattered. "This one is Bai Yi. I wonder how I should address you, miss?" The man arrived in front of her in a few steps and bowed towards her, looking like a modest gentleman. Zhu Yao instinctively took a step back as those words frantically flashed in her mind. "He hasn't bathed for 5 years. He hasn't bathed for 5 years. He hasn't bathed for 5 years." Bai Yi was startled for a moment, and a moment later, he smiled again. A light seemed to flash past his eyes, carrying an indescribable charm. "Miss, there's no need to be afraid. This is one of my family's courtyards. I left in a hurry and was unable to return in time. Seeing that the sky was already dark, I decided to settle down here. Coincidentally, I saw Miss passing by, and seeing that we share the same fate, I decided to invite you over." He spoke with great sincerity, as though he was a good person who was anxious for her. His right hand, however, silently cast an art. "There's no need." Zhu Yao shook her head. If it was said that she only wanted to leave as soon as possible earlier and did not want to clash with him, now that she had seen him in person, her heart was firmly placed back into her stomach. Fox Demon, 9th level of Essence. "Ho ho. Miss, the sky is about to turn dark soon. It's very dangerous for you to travel alone." Bai Yi continued to persuade her. Zhu Yao simply did not want to waste any more time here and immediately rolled her eyes at him. "I'm happy. Why do you care?" After saying that, she continued to walk forward. Bai Yi's smiling face stiffened for a moment, as though he did not expect that she would reply in such a manner. A moment later, he regained his senses and immediately chased after her, blocking her path. "Miss, the market is about 30 kilometers away, and it's a wasteland in front of us. There are many vicious wolves there. You must not be careless." "Oh." She let him go and continued forward. Bai Yi once again stiffened for a moment, and then he pulled onto Zhu Yao's hand. "Miss, what?" For a moment, he was unable to find a reason, and many emotions flashed past his face. A moment later, he released her hand. Taking a deep breath, he opened his folding fan with a swoosh and lightly waved it a few times. He put on a confident and romantic look, and the luster in his eyes swirled. "Miss, it is fate that brought us together." As he spoke, he approached her. In an instant, a strange fragrance suddenly rose in the surroundings, and it was so sweet that it could cause one to feel drowsy. His eyes stared straight at her, and he even slowly reached out his hand, reaching towards the side of her face. "Are you sure you don't want to stay and have a good chat with me?" Zhu Yao casually pinched and grabbed onto a layer of skin on his hand. She forcefully twirled it, and then the corner of her lips split apart, revealing an exceptionally radiant smile. "You want to woo me? What do you mean by woo?" Bai Yi was startled, as he did not quite understand. However, seeing how happy she was smiling, He felt a little more at ease in the depths of his heart, as he thought that his bewitching arts had taken effect. He subconsciously ignored the bruise on his hand that was being pinched by her. His smile grew even deeper, and he retracted his hand. It was unknown if it was intentional or not, but the clothes on his shoulders suddenly slid down a little, revealing half of his white chest. It was indescribably alluring, and with slightly narrowed eyes, he said with an extremely ambiguous tone, "I wonder if Miss will grant me the honor?" Zhu Yao's eyes instantly focused on the half of his chest that was revealed. His smile grew even more complacent. As expected, all women in the world were the same. He intentionally tugged at his own clothes and opened them even further. He even intentionally moved closer to her ears and said with a fragrant breath, "Do you like it?" Zhu Yao calmly raised her head and glanced at him. Then, she calmly reached out her claws and calmly grabbed onto his half-opened collar. Calmly exerting force, she pulled it open with a walla sound. "You actually dare to show off these few pieces of meat in front of this old lady." Zhu Yao incomparably seriously swept her eyes across his body and intentionally stopped at a certain important part of his lower body. She calmly raised her head, raised the corner of her lips, and let out an unclear sound. Heh. Bai faintly heard two cracking sounds in the depths of his heart. Something called male dignity was instantly shattered into pieces. His expression instantly turned as pale as snow, and he fiercely leaped a step back. His hands unconsciously pressed onto the important parts, and like a quail, he held onto his lower body. Why you? Bai's face instantly flushed red as he looked at her with a nervous and disbelieving expression. "What about me?" "Humph, you're still too inexperienced to compete with me in terms of integrity. Initially, I didn't want to stick my nose into your business, but you just had to run out and seek abuse." Zhu Yao patted her hands. Casting an art with a wave of her hand, she summoned two vines and began to fiercely whip him. "You look like a bear, yet you still dare to come out and sell your meat." Zhu Yao whipped him even faster. "This is what you get for blocking the way. This is what you get for competing with me in terms of integrity. This is what you get for not bathing." It seemed like some strange thing had mixed in. Great deity, spare my life." Only then did the fox demon Bai realize that he had encountered a practitioner. This little demon will never dare to do it again. The suppression of their ranks caused the fox demon to be completely powerless to retaliate, and he could only beg for mercy. "Speak, just how many innocent girls have you harmed?" I didn't." The fox demon no longer had the carefree look he had before, as he cried out with snot and tears running down his face. "You still dare to deny it?" Zhu Yao twisted her hand, and once again whipped his buttocks. "What's with the clothes in the well in your courtyard? How did you know?" The fox demon was startled, as he fiercely opened his eyes. Zhu Yao activated the vines and tied him up. "Did you trick people into your courtyard to eat them, and then throw the clothes into the well?" "Eat?" Bai was startled, and then he began to shake his head. No, I'm innocent, great deity. Human flesh isn't tasty. I only like to eat chicken. I've never eaten a human before." "You're still trying to deny it." Zhu Yao stepped forward and gave him a kick. "Not a single one of the girls who entered my courtyard came out." Bai cried even more miserably. "That's because they all left from the back door. My courtyard is too big, and if I leave from the back door, I'll be much closer to the nearest market." Zhu Yao stiffened for a moment. This wasn't right. "Then why did you trick the passing girls into your courtyard? Don't tell me you're just asking them to stay for the night out of goodwill. Earlier, you even used a charm art on me." This, Bai's face reddened, and his entire face instantly turned as red as a tomato. A moment later, he stuttered, That's her. They were all dressed very nicely. I had just learned how to transform, and the color of my fur wasn't good. So I wanted to change my clothes, so..." "You tricked people into your courtyard, just to steal their clothes." Zhu Yao was dumbfounded. Just what kind of weird thought process was this? "I have no choice either." Bai was about to bury his head into the vines. "Who asked?" who asked all of them to look so good in their clothes. He weakly sized up Zhu Yao. You look good in yours too. Zhu Yao felt a chill. This is female clothing. You're a grown man. Aren't you a little too hardcore? I know how to change it. His eyes instantly brightened. Look at the one I'm wearing. I changed it myself. Alright, his skills were pretty good. Back then, I accidentally slashed that girl's clothes. I really couldn't change it anymore, so I threw it into the well, he said with a regretful look. Zhu Yao was completely speechless towards this fox with such a unique taste. In the end, Zhu Yao still let that stupid fox go, and conveniently had him dismantle that courtyard. In the future, he was not allowed to do something as foolish as stealing other people's clothes. If he wanted good-looking clothes, he could totally go to the market to buy them himself. It was only because of his good luck that he had not encountered any practitioners for so many years. Otherwise, with that little bit of cultivation he had, he would have turned into cannon fodder at any moment. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.